What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 185. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton. Joining me today are a pair of my teammates. You know them well, Mr. Trevor Everett, Mr. Michael DeRosa. Fellas, Peyton hopefully will be joining us here soon. He's got a headache deal going on. He should be joining us later, hopefully. We've spent 5 months to whittle everything down to 68 teams. Then we've spent the last 2 weeks to whittle things down to the Final Four. We are down to the Final Four teams remaining, playing for a national championship this upcoming week in Phoenix. It has went by quick. It's felt like the fastest 5 months I can remember in a long, long time, but we are down to the Final Four. Trevor, I know you have special feelings about this one, my friend, and we're going to let you air all that out. But boys, we are down to the Final Four, and I can't believe it. It's already here.
I'm just elated that we get Jeffrey Anderson. We get high knees for at least one more game. Jeffrey Anderson fan account lives on forever. I know we're not doing shout outs this early, but I don't care. Shout out to Jeffrey Anderson for being selected as one of the 11 officials to do the Final Four. We get the Jeffrey Anderson high knees at least one more time.
I can't outdo that. Just get to the show.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have, that's a terrible thing to follow up.
No, you kidding me? I'm supposed to be a showman. I'm supposed to be able to follow it up. Sometimes you can't. You tip the cap, you move on.
Well, so Fanta tweeted the list before the NCAA did, and then not even 3 minutes later, the Jeffrey Anderson fan account had already reposted it, and it had like 10,000 likes or something in a minute. It was stupid. I was like, this is incredible. And I've been to Jeffrey Anderson's games this year. It's unreal. So yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, he is probably taken over TV Teddy as the most publicized, highly profile official right now for mostly positive things. Like, everybody likes the high knees. I mean, we could all talk about officials for other reasons, but we're going to keep everything positive here today because it's a positive experience. We are down to the Final Four, and we're going to talk about what led us here, how each team got here from this last weekend of action from the Sweet 16, Elite 8. We've got some history being made, teams getting back to there in almost 40 years, a team being there for the first time, and then you're reigning national champs trying to do the double for the first time since Florida. So really, it's a historic Final Four, and we are going to break this down. I do want to obviously spend some time talk about each team's past, but I will lead with this at the top. When you look at this, we've heard about parity in college basketball. I mean, you look at last year's Final Four, right? With San Diego State, Florida Atlantic making a Cinderella run. I mean, even really Miami in a way. But this year, it's kind of back to some household names. Even though it's Alabama's first, they've been a household name under Nate Oates. And then the correlation of you've got 3 former high school coaches that are now coaching their team in a Final Four. So when you look at kind of the whole of the Final Four this year, was last year more of a kind of not even a blip, just kind of an anomaly? And we're back to more of the powerhouse names, should we say, being back in the Final Four? Or how, when you look at this, I guess, as an overview of the Final Four, how do you guys see this?
I feel like once every 7-ish, 10 years, we get that random team in the Final Four. We're talking a Florida Atlantic, a Loyola Chicago, something like that. But for the most part, it's the Final Four you're used to seeing the best teams. And this kind of feels like, to me, UConn is going to lose just about everybody. Purdue, Zach Edey's gone, and Zach Edey is just about everybody on that team. To me, it kind of feels like for those two teams at least. And then we look at NC State. NC State, 4 of those guys are grad seniors, I believe. Yeah, so I feel like just get old, stay old. That's kind of the mantra. But also, these teams are also going to look completely different next year. So it's kind of like a passing the torch. You guys all earned your shot. Here you go. And then next year, it'll be completely different. I would fully expect to see 4 completely different teams in the Final Four. That's a hot take right there, but I delivered it.
Well, I mean, no, and you're 100% right. My answer is going to sound really lazy, but we're always going to see really good teams make the Final Four. Yeah. I know it's not all number 1 seeds. Only happened since 2008. That was the only time ever. Sure, right? For crying out loud, I've made this example many times. I was at a Final Four last year where not a single great team was there. I mean, for crying out loud, if you think about it from that lane of just what their seed was. But this might be the lazy answer, but with the transfer portal now and the coaching carousel and how people can build programs quickly and almost immediately sometimes, we're going to see great teams every year now. Like last year, the seeding numbers were, I think, just a little funky. This year, even, I think some of the seeding might be a little bit off, too. I think UConn's properly seeded. Obviously, we realize Alabama might be improperly seeded. There's enough seeding conversations that we had when this bracket came out 3 weeks ago that I think it's more of a seeding thing than it is are we going to have teams repeat, and is it going to be this? Like, the continuity we know is completely almost dead. And teams that do know how to do it are kind of the outlier, right? Like Duke this year was the only team where the entire starting lineup was a Duke player the previous year or a freshman.
You know what else stands out to me in this Final Four? And I've been saying this, having played, coached, all that fun stuff. And I think it rings true, especially when we kind of talk about some of these Elite 8 games, Sweet 16 games from this past weekend. Elite offenses reign. Like, it is the era of what we say modern basketball, but it's the era of you've got to be able to score the basketball. Like, obviously, your defense has to be on par, but you have Alabama, the outlier, that there's a crazy stat about Alabama that's following a trend for 2 years now. But, their defense was not good all year, and their offense has been elite. I mean, you look at the Final Four, the number 1, 2, and 3 offenses and adjusted efficiency, according to KenPom, are in the Final Four. Then you have an NC State team that is a top 40 offense. So you have to be able to score the ball. That's why when we talk pre-tournament, I wasn't so much in love with a team like Iowa State or some of these, even Eric Haslam even mentioned it, the teams that are more just defensive, grind it out all the time, and that have bursts of offense, but not steady offense that can really blow you away. They always struggle in the tournament, and for another year in a row, we've kind of seen it. Elite offenses win in the tournament. Bar none, period. Elite offenses. Point in case, number 1, 2, and 3 offense, and then a top 40 offense in North Carolina State. So I think this will be the trend as we go forward. You're going to see teams that can kind of get away with subpar defense, but have explosive offenses, and they're going to find their way in the Final Four because, again, you got to score the basketball. One last thing before we get into kind of reviewing these games. What are your guys' takes on the Inflategate balls? Because I didn't buy into it. I always thought when you'd hear stuff like that, like, they're excuses. Then I seen something this morning where you compare it to the ball throughout the year because, Nike teams use Nike balls, and then like Adidas and Under Armour use like this Wilson ball we've been using. The normal ball, when you bounce it, has almost like a give and then it comes back up. If you watch these tournament games, like, you have really good guards that have really good handles losing the ball just off of a dribble because they're saying that they're overinflating the basketball where you barely bounce it and it goes sky high. What's your guys' take on that? Do you think the NCAA is, I won't say doing it on purpose, that's kind of conspiracy, but I mean, there is some truth to it.
I don't know. I think they're just trying to standardize it just for the tournament, just because, I mean, with different conferences, the ball's going to be a little bit different, and it's like kind of hard to make it. I don't know. I can't say I am an expert on just the behind the scenes stuff, like preparing the balls and stuff like that. So that'd be a question I'd ask someone much smarter than me. That's my best answer.
And that is not me, so I have no comment because honestly, I didn't even know about it until about an hour and a half ago, and I think it's kind of baloney if we're being honest.
I mean, the only thing I can say from experience is you go certain places, whether it be like a men's league game, or even sometimes in high school when you're playing, and you'd go to certain places and they would overinflate the ball, and it's really rock hard, and you could feel a difference in shooting and dribbling and everything. I don't know. I guess it's something to have to monitor. It never like crossed my mind, but it's been a big deal on the internet, so I thought it was worth pointing out. But let's get to what everybody wants to talk about. By the way, we are live as always. We're on the Facebook, the YouTube, the Twitter. We're on the House of College Hoops, or Twitter as well. If you're in with us live, as always, leave your comments below. We will get them, put them up on screen, all that fun stuff. And of course, this podcast is presented in part with House of College Hoops. You can visit our site, house-enterprise.com, for more information on that. Let's get into it. Let's start back in the East where the overall number 1 seed resided. They played San Diego State, and we talked about this last Monday, kind of previewing this game. What could San Diego State do in the Sweet 16 to pull a shocker? It's a rematch of last year's national championship game. And, I mean, we had a hard time coming up with what they could do other than just pray UConn misses a bunch of shots and Jaden Ledee goes nuts. I mean, UConn ran them out of the building. UConn beat them by 30. They also didn't end. That wasn't their only blowout of the weekend we're going to talk about. But, guys, UConn's such a wagon, especially when we talk about this Illinois game here in a minute. I mean, was there did you feel bad? Put it this way. Did you feel bad for San Diego State? Because that's not a bad team, and UConn made them look pretty bad.
No, because this team is the only team ever, I want to make that clear, ever, that has ever been up 30 in all 4 games heading to the Final Four at any point. It's stupid. Like, I don't feel bad for anybody because they're all getting the same beatdown. Like, sorry to Donnie Jones and Stetson. Shout out to Donnie Jones for coming by the pod, right? But, like, he's not no one. They're not discriminating. They're beating up Donnie Jones the same they're beating up Illinois and Brad Underwood all the way. I know I skipped ahead a little bit, but, like, everybody's getting the whooping. Like, it just is what it is. Like, I feel bad for, do I feel bad for these teams? Sure. Like, they don't even have a remote fighting chance, it seems. Like, Illinois in the first half, like, you should do the side-by-sides of those 2 scores before they went on the 30-0 run. It's like 2 different games. And
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought. My bad.
That was it. It's 2 different games. Like, UConn, when they want to, and I'll just say this stat now because I think it needs to be said. I think it really does speak to your point a little bit. UConn shooting 28% from 3 on their run.
It's crazy.
28 guys. Like, if any other team shoots 28%, they're going home and sitting on the couch and watching the Final Four with us.
Here's the thing. I've been around this sport for 30 years, right? Playing, coaching, all that. That's been well documented. In such a high level game, being an Elite Eight, we talk about this UConn-Illinois game. I've never seen a 30-0 run, even against like a UConn against a bad team. Do you know how hard it is to put a 30-0 run up on just any team? And they put a 30-0 run on Illinois after Illinois had got it tied at 23. Then UConn stretches it to 5, and that's part of that 30-0 run that end up blowing this game wide open and pretty much finishing it in the early stages of the second half. I've never seen in a game like that another team go on a 30-0 run. And once it started snowballing DeRosa, once Illinois started turning the ball over and missing wide open shots and UConn was running it down their throat, dunking everything, you could just see the life come out of Illinois. You want to know, before you comment on that, an interesting stat about how dominant UConn has been. In all the NCAA tournament, leading into the Final Four, the largest scoring margins entering the Final Four in tournament history, the 93 Kentucky team entered the Final Four with a plus 124 scoring margin, still the biggest of all time. Second is 1999 Duke with plus 120. Third is the 1996 Kentucky team at plus 113, who I say is the greatest team of all time. You had 10 NBA players, future Hall of Famers, etc. And then UConn is now fourth with a plus 111 scoring margin entering the Final Four. They're blowing teams out. They have now put themselves in the company of a 93 team Kentucky that had Travis Ford, Jamal Mashburn, Rick Pitino on the sideline that scored a lot of points and press. 1999, you had Elton Brand, you had Trajan Langdon, a great Duke team. 96 Kentucky, like I said, I think is the greatest college team of all time. All these NBA. Point being, UConn's now amongst the immortals in this game. They've got a plus 111 scoring margin. DeRosa, they are just taking no mercy on anybody in this tournament.
Yeah, to your earlier point, I played on some AAU teams that were, to put it politely, we were terrible. Even then, we played against some teams that went D1. We got some guys who were lucky to start in intramurals. We never gave up a 30-0 run. 25? Probably. 30? I don't think we did. So, yeah, I think that just speaks to the dominance of this UConn team. And also partially, I mean, you guys all saw Brad Underwood's interview at halftime when they were like, yeah, if Klingon blocks 100 shots, he blocks 100 shots.
Right.
He could have blocked 100 shots. And yeah, that was just, that one amazed me. But yeah, this UConn team is just dominant. And we're going to get to the preview of the game later, but I feel like Alabama, there's definitely a number of threes Alabama needs to hit for us to feel like they have a chance. And I feel like that number is pretty high.
Well, we have a special guest joining us. It is our honor to welcome Seth Davis from CBS. You see him on the tournament coverage, does a great job. Seth, you've been there for years now, right? Almost 2 decades doing tournament coverage. We were just talking about UConn's dominance and their scoring margin. They're 4th all-time entering the Final Four at plus 111. I mean, Illinois and San Diego State are quality teams. They had no shot. Have you ever in your life seen a team put up a 30-0 run on another really good team in a game of that magnitude?
First of all, are you guys over 20?
Oh, yeah, I'm 35.
35. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were young. Well, I mean, compared to me, you're young. Yeah, I'm just saying because you asked. I've been doing the tournament now for 20 years, so this is 2004.
I was 6 whenever you joined CBS.
I was 1.
All right, but you were born
I'm
at
the
this
old
point.
I
in
was.
the group, Seth.
So you're older. Yeah, it's crazy to me because when you look at all of these other dominant teams, especially teams that repeated as champs, they returned everybody from the previous year. Duke 91, 92, Florida 06, 07 may have lost one player here or there, but certainly nothing like UConn. And last year they romped through the tournament 20 points per game in those 6 games. So Dan Hurley loses 3 starters, loses 5 of his top 8 scorers, and they're better. They're better. It's astounding. I don't know that I've ever seen a 30-0 run. I'm sure someone's done the research. I mean, even like in a November bye game, usually
we were saying,
team, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that somebody. I'll bet. What's his name? Is it Jared Burson? Is that his name? ESPN Stats. One of those. Those guys. We'll be able to find that. So, and to your point, I mean, this is an Illinois team that just won the Big Ten tournament. I mean, Illinois is like really good. So it's crazy. I mean, I just keep waiting for somebody to put game pressure on them. I mean, presumably, Purdue could do it if they get there. And you made the point about other teams like 99 Duke, 91 UNLV. I was going through this with Clark Kellogg. He had done a little bit of research as far as really, really dominant teams and heavy favorites that did not win it. Those are the 2 that come to mind for me: 91 UNLV and 99 Duke. But this would be pretty astounding if they don't at least get to the championship game. I mean, I think Purdue and UConn have been on a collision course, but still, what UConn is doing is historic. But they still got 2 more games to win. They better play well.
And 2015 Kentucky as well.
Yeah,
completely dominant that year.
I knew there was another one. Great one. Yep.
I'll ask you this real quick, Seth. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
When you think about, you mentioned a team like somebody's going to have to put the pressure on them a little bit, even though Alabama has had, I feel like this run early in the season, they prepared themselves for this moment. Like they put themselves through a ridiculous non-conference schedule. And obviously that we saw them grind down a game earlier this year in the tournament against Grand Canyon. We saw them go up and put up 100 against Charleston Plus, right? How much are you buying into the ability for Alabama to just bring in the consistent offense that we've seen, and we know that they're prepared for the moment?
Well, I mean, look, they've got a better chance than North Carolina, right? I mean, they got a better chance than Clemson. So being in the game is where you got to start, and they're playing really well. I mean, you got to really give them credit. They have, they're not an elite defensive team by any stretch, but kind of like North Carolina State. It's interesting. We tend to get slide into the thinking that by the time you get to the tournament, you're still a finished product, and we don't account for the possibilities that you can still get better in the tournament, right? And so North Carolina State's played a lot of games now, right? They had 5 in 5 days, and then 4 in 2 weeks, so they had a lot of reps to get better. So yeah, I mean, Alabama. The thing about Alabama is they're going to shoot 30 to 35 3-pointers. They just are. Are they going to shoot lights out? I mean, are they going to make 21 to 30? If they do that, they're going to have a real chance to win. The problem is the main reason why Alabama has not been good defensively is they don't have size. They don't have size on the perimeter. Estrada and Mark Sears are little guys, and they don't have the Charles Bediako, Noah Clowney combination inside to protect the rim. And so, you're talking about, and again, to my point about getting better, I mean, Donovan Clingan is getting better, week by week, game by game. He's getting so much confidence, both ends of the floor. So, he's really the unicorn. I mean, like Zach Edey is for Purdue. I mean, a lot of teams have players like a Tristan Newton, like a Cam Spencer, like a Stephon Castle. Very few. There's really only one that has a player like Donovan Clingan, and that's going to be Alabama's biggest problem, literally and figuratively.
When you talk about game planning wise on the Alabama-UConn game, we obviously know the game plan. Alabama's going to take a lot of threes, and they're probably going to have to hit a high percentage of those just to kind of keep UConn on edge. When I look at the game, I'm looking at guys like Grant Nelson, Jaren Stevenson, for their ability to stretch out and potentially open up UConn's defense for driving lanes. Because we know Mark Sears, I feel pretty confident saying Mark Sears is going to have a good game. Like he always has a good game. do you agree with like a Grant Nelson in particular? We've seen what he did in the North Carolina game. He probably won them that game. How big of an impact do you think he has to have in order for Alabama to keep this close inside the Final Four and really put some game pressure on UConn?
Yeah, no, probably about it. I mean, Grant Nelson, absolutely. And with his defense as well. And, I covered him a little bit last year at North Dakota State and did a piece on him as kind of the futuristic big man in the poor man's Wembanyama mode. I mean, my feeling is that, 10 years from now, there's not going to be anyone in the NBA shorter than 6'11". The Stephen Curry of the next generation is going to be 6'11". Him moving up to Alabama, he's had a very hard time all season with the physicality of basketball at this level. His size and his skill and his bounciness, all that has never been in question. But when you're getting pushed around, when you're not strong physically, you lose confidence. And so he's gotten better. But, Jaren Stevenson was the difference in the Clemson game. And so I think the broader point that I would make is if you're going to beat someone like UConn, like you said, Mark Sears really should have, if you think about it, Mark Sears should have been SEC Player of the Year. Like, he had a better season than Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht had bigger moments, and so I would have gone with Dalton Knecht. But if you look at the stats across the board in terms of assists, rebounds, steals, assist to turnover, percentages, and Sears actually scored more points than Knecht. But anyway, if he has a bad game, Alabama obviously has no chance. But it's just this notion of somebody other than who you would expect to step up and have a big game. Like Ben Middlebrooks has done some of that for NC State. And so, that, to me, it's going to take all hands on deck. I mean, you can't, if you're Alabama, you can't hope that UConn has an off night, and you can't think that you're going to win this thing with your B game. You better be ready to play, and you better make shots at an efficient level, because shots are not going to be easy to come by.
The first 4 minutes are paramount for Alabama. Like, they cannot find themselves in a hole because, as we've seen, UConn has that ability to just, when they want to turn it on, they'll turn it on and it's over. DeRosa, I know you got something for Seth.
Yeah, I'm a Big East guy through and through. I've been watching the Big East since I was allowed to. Because entering the season with this UConn team, like you were, before we were doing preseason rankings and all that, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought they were a little overrated because I thought people were looking in and being like, yeah,
me too.
Yeah. We were expecting this jump from Tristan Newton, who, when they went on their losing skid last year before they won every single game by like 20 plus, Newton was kind of the worst player on that team. And then we see Klingon coming off the bench. Are we expecting Klingon to be that first round pick that everyone says he is, that top 5 pick now that everyone says he is, or a guy like Caravan stepping up into his role, or even a Stephon Castle? That's a freshman, but he's a freshman who's starting. And then they picked up Cam Spencer in June. So, but I think really a lot of what UConn has done is kind of through player development. So if you could speak to me, what do you think on how a team is constructed, and a team like UConn? Do you think player development is kind of the wave of the future and zagging where everyone zigs and the high school recruiting model? Or do you think it's people just, look, we just got to get every transfer we can and see where they go from there? Kind of like how an NC State is constructed.
Have you guys ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory?
Yeah.
Okay.
They got a little bit of everything.
Shout out to Tony Patilis, yeah.
It takes 20 minutes to read that menu.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a million things on that menu. So if you're a college basketball coach, you better be ready to order from the whole menu. And let's actually backtrack, because you mentioned about Spencer. Dan Hurley wanted Nick Timberlake.
Yep.
Thought he had Nick Timberlake. Nick Timberlake's a kid from Maine. Dan Hurley's like, yo, bro, we just won the championship. I've got a spot. You'll probably start, and he thought he had him. And at the last second, Kansas, whether it's NIL money, whatever it was, they got him. And so Dan was pissed. He was bummed. He's like, all right, well, we're just going to have to win with what we have. And then, to your point, Cam Spencer enters the portal late. Again, what went on with that? I know that Mick Cronin thought he had Cam Spencer. And then at the last second, UConn came up with a lot more NIL money. And so Cam Spencer has been a great fit. But we all know the type of season Timberlake had at Kansas, or should we say did not have at Kansas. Every opportunity to compete and contribute. They desperately needed him to be a contributor. And for whatever reason, he wasn't that guy. Well, it was his defense, really, but he barely played. So, that's kind of the sliding doors thing, right? What if Timberlake had said yes to UConn, how would that, one little thing like that can really throw off the
Mhm.
whole dynamic. So Spencer has been a perfect fit. Obviously, not just his shooting, his scoring, his playmaking, but his whole attitude. He fits
yeah.
right in the,
He's
Dan
awesome.
Hurley says, basically I'm a guy who's this and that, and I can be an asshole at times, and they're just perfect for each other. So Spencer's been a great fit. So point being that, look, Tristan Newton is a transfer. He helped me out here with their roster. Caravan, Klingon, Castle, obviously being a freshman. Johnson, these are all players who've developed.
Yep.
Spencer's a new addition. And so it's worked out. I mean, I think Danny deserves a lot of credit. The guys who are the best at this, Scott Drew, by the way, was always really good at this. Like I go back to, remember Adam Flagler played for Baylor?
Presbyterian. Yeah.
Presbyterian. Like, how does that happen? And the rest of those of that championship backcourt was the same. So it's the ability to identify players who aren't just good enough to play for you, but are a cultural fit. And by the way, it's not like a long courtship, romantic dating thing, right? It's speed dating.
Yeah.
It's Tinder, whatever. It's so how do you even know? Like a lot of these guys use analytics. Like my son goes to Texas. I'm around that program a lot, and they thought they had a great one in Ethiel Horton, who came from Central Florida. Couldn't play, barely played for him. Didn't work out. So, there's a lot of luck involved in this now. But if you set your intentionality where you're good at evaluating, and you have to be fiercely protective of your culture. I mean, look at NC State. What do they have? 11 transfers or something like that? Like, I mean, Kevin Keats ordered the whole menu. I mean, he ordered like 6 different cheesecakes. He ordered the appetizers, a little Italian, a little sushi. Like he had everything. And it's only in March.
They've got meetings with guys this week too. That's the craziest thing, like you said.
Yeah. And you want to talk about like Timberlake had he went to UConn, a little change in destiny there. I mean, imagine if O'Connell doesn't hit that bank-in 3 against Virginia, we don't get this awesome story from North Carolina State. So this is the beauty of March, Seth. I mean, I can't even tell you. First of all, thank you for even sharing our stuff last week. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I love you guys.
Big time. And to share us and then even come on. I mean, it looks like you're traveling right now.
I'm home. I live in LA.
Okay.
I'm gonna go watch my son in the batting cage. But
nice.
I don't know even how I found your tweet, but so is this like your full-time job, or you guys have day jobs, I assume?
Still working on it.
Still working on it. We've been at it for 6 years, but each year it's getting better and better. Like last year, we started getting credentialed. We're traveling all the time now, so little step by step, we're getting well connected. Scotty Davenport.
What about revenue? Are we making revenue? What are we doing?
A little bit. Yeah, we got an ad roll later today. So
we got an ad roll from Rhythm. We did a preseason magazine the last 2 years that's done really well.
That's right. Yep.
So we're getting there, man. We're trying to get where you're at, and hopefully we can become colleagues or something one day. But we can't appreciate you enough. Like seriously, thank you for taking the time out. I know you got to get to the batting cages. You're out there in sunny LA. Well, Indiana is doing crazy weather right now, so
stay in touch with me over Twitter. And if you ever get stuck with credentials, definitely hit me up.
Hey, really quick.
Will do.
If people are not helping with credentials, hit me up. I can grease those wheels for you. I can try anyway.
Really quick. I know you just had a new book come out. Really quick. Yeah. Give us 30 seconds on why people need to read the book about Rex Chapman. I know you've talked about it recently as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The book is called "It's Hard for Me to Live with Me," and it's a memoir that I wrote with Rex about Rex's life. It's all in his voice. It's just a very raw, honest, real book. People like Rex Chapman go through life. And then people like us look at them and think, boy, man, I wish I was that person. And they're looking at us and saying, boy, man, I wish I was that person. And so we all have tough experiences. And Rex had some serious problems with opioid addiction. And he blew through $40 million in salary with gambling on racehorses and pills and not being smart with his money. And eventually got arrested for shoplifting merchandise out of an Apple store and selling the merchandise at pawn shops because he was totally out of money. Went to rehab, cleaned himself up, working his way back, and completely and accidentally reinvented himself as a social media superstar on Twitter with over 1 million followers because he was posting funny videos. And it was a very, very painful experience for Rex to write this book. And it was very painful for him to have it out there. But now that it's out there, it's been really well received. And I think he's he's going through some healing. So hope you guys will check it out, and I hope
Well,
people. I think it can hopefully help some people who are experiencing a lot of the same problems but are not famous and wealthy NBA players.
Well, I will say this is double it because everybody knows me. I mean, I've got it on my sleeve. I'm a lifelong Kentucky fan, right? So Rex, obviously, love Rex. And I've dealt with the opioids in my family with my dad. I've had friends who've lost their lives. So getting that story out there and trying to help people is like touches my heartstrings. I'm definitely going to read that. I've actually reached out to Rex like years ago when he first started becoming like Twitter popular. So I appreciate the book. I cannot wait to read it. But again, Seth, seriously, from all of us, thank you for coming on. We'll try, if you schedule the line, maybe have you back on some of our summer shows.
Yeah, hit me
have
up.
a little fun with that.
If I can do it, I will. Okay, keep
I
crushing it,
appreciate
guys.
you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Okay.
That
Thank
is
you,
Seth
Seth.
Davis from CBS Sports. Seth Davis, what a great guy. About to go into the Suns batting cage workouts out in LA, sunny LA.
Wow.
I mean, that looked beautiful out there.
I know.
That was
God.
awesome, fellas. That was awesome. Round of applause for all of you. Seriously.
Oh man.
That was legit right there.
Good guy.
Wow. We've
Back
we
on
got a
track,
show
right?
to
We
do.
gotta figure out how to like land. We gotta like get the train fell off the tracks about 15 minutes
Yeah.
ago. It's like I'm glad I did want to bring up the book. I'm glad that we were able
Yeah.
to get that in at the end because he had did an interview like maybe a week and a half, or I was catching up on some podcasts, and he had done an interview and went a little bit more in depth. And I really didn't think he was going to describe the story in that 30-second hit there. Like I really didn't, but I'm glad he was able to emphasize the point of what it was. And obviously, people know Rex Chapman for a lot of different reasons. Josh, you know him as a fan, and other people know him for the Twitter stuff. And now we're getting to see what his life was like and how he recovered from it. So it really is an incredible story, and I'm super excited to read it this summer.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad. Thank you again, Seth Davis.
Big time.
I guess we
Thank
call
you.
him friend of the show now because he said good word.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
friend of the
friend of the
program.
show,
Yeah,
Seth
friend of the
Davis. And we're going to put that on the title. But let's get back to action. We do have one more guest coming on here in just a little bit. We are going, since we've been talking about Alabama, we will be joined by, he's been on the show before, Nate Oatsburner, big time Alabama fan. I felt like it was only right for him to come on and describe the emotions of his Crimson Tide making the first ever Final Four. But we were talking kind of about UConn's dominance. I mean, they blow through San Diego State. They blow through Illinois. We talked about their scoring margin. DeRoth, I know you're going to pick fun at this. I'm going to give you a little bit of time here. Brad Underwood's, I guess his game plan of if Klingon blocks 100 shots, he'll block 100 shots. We don't give a shit pretty much. And that's kind of what Klingon did. I mean, what's your take on kind of that strategy? Because it didn't work, compadre.
Yeah. I remember we did a Road to the Garden show. We did like awards and we were talking with other guys. We had a co-Big East player, a defensive player of the year. Klingon and Devin Carter, I believe, were our nominees. I was very strong on the Klingon side because when you look at the numbers from when Klingon was out to when Klingon played, UConn's defense was like night and day. Like UConn's defense, I believe, in a period when he was out, ranked third in the country, or when he was active, ranked third in the country, versus when he was out, it was like 35th, somewhere around that range. So yeah, when Brad Underwood said if he blocks 100 shots, he blocks 100 shots, it's like, what are you doing?
It's like the Ivan Drago, right? If he die, he die.
Yeah, he dies, he dies. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, that's a great game plan, yeah. And I like to block punches with my face. So yeah, worked out. Yeah, worked out really well. That was sharp. Yeah, that was, oh my god. Yeah.
Well, here's what didn't make sense.
Yeah, let me just say this first. I am 0-1 as a fourth grade AAU coach. That is as far as my coaching experience goes, aside from like some rec games where I was like probably above 500. But I'm 0-1 as a fourth grade AAU coach. I could have told you that was a really bad game plan because I've watched Donovan Klingon play. And I can also look at the numbers and see like, yeah, this guy's the best defender in the Big East by a long shot. I don't think we just need to run at him and see if he can block shots. So yeah, that was foolish to me. But Brad Underwood gets paid a lot of money. He knows what he's doing. Just not there.
Here's the thing that didn't make sense to that either. Like on theory, like if you do coach or play and you're always told to go into his shot blocker to try to get into his body because it's harder to block a shot and you can pick up fouls. But Illinois wasn't doing that. They were going up with like ball first. If you like, I'm trying to demonstrate here. So instead of keeping the ball like protected and going up strong where you have an opportunity, they were leading the ball out in front of them. And that's the easiest thing to block a shot.
Yep.
They were going up so timid, even though they were trying to give the illusion they were going up strong. If you're going to go into him, go into him. Or they were trying to deal where Klingon's playing off of them to not get a foul and just block a shot or tip it. and then they would throw their body into him and throw a wild shot up. I thought Illinois obviously wasn't a great game plan going in there on the big man trying to finish layups. And it didn't help that they went, Trev, 6 of 23 from 3. Like against this team, 11 of 44 from the floor, 6 of 23 from 3. Free throw line, they were okay, 12 of 17. But in order to beat UConn, you got to make shots. Going 25% from inside the arc and 26% from three-point land is just not going to get it done. You got to make shots to put pressure on UConn. And we talked about UConn didn't shoot great. I mean, 65% from inside the three-point line is way better than what Illinois shot, but they only shot 17% from 3 themselves, and they still won by 25 and was on a 30-0 run. So I guess from your perspective, Trev, Illinois' game planning, what did you think about it?
Look, a tale of two tapes is really like, even like the first half. I just don't know what Alabama, like at this point, I'm just like looking forward now because less about the game that happened. There's nothing I can add that's going to make that conversation more productive. I guess my thought would be, based on what we saw, is how can, like, Alabama's going to have a shoot if they have a good shooting night, which I know we saw the tale of two halves for them too, right? Where they had ridiculously low shooting percentage in the first half and then they shot like 60% in the second half across the board, whatever it was, something stupid, right? I guess my point is if UConn gets out of this slump, I just don't know what kind of chance Alabama has. Like, I just don't think that's the thing. Both teams are teetering on that, and it's very likely, statistically, that Alabama has a bad shooting half now eventually, or even full game, and UConn has a good one, and then at that point, I don't see how Alabama wins the game.
One last thing on UConn, and then we'll start kind of previewing the Final Four games and all that, but I do want to bring up something interesting. DeRosa, maybe you can speak on. In Connecticut's 3 losses, Tristan Newton has had incredible games. 27 against Creighton. He put up, what was it against Seton Hall? He put up, he had 16 against Creighton, and then whatever it was against Kansas, I'll look it up here. He had 31 against Kansas.
Yeah.
When he's scoring that much, they lose games. It's not that you don't want him to score, but it seems like they get so dominant with him trying to handle the ball, shoot, take contested jump shots late in the shot clock, be a hero ball. Do you think that Connecticut is better served by him maybe getting like 10 and letting everybody else shine?
Yeah, that's the best version of that team is when he's moving the ball versus I think way you want to play him is either make him give up the ball as soon as possible and so someone else has to run their offense and just pressure him. I mean, the best way to defend him is to pressure him a ton. You just want to be up in his grill for as long as possible because before he was at UConn, he was East Carolina and he was like kind of a tweener between a 1 and a 2. He wasn't like a full 1. Now he's like turned into he is a 1, like just straight up he is. But way to defend him, you got to pressure him as much as you can. And if you make him beat you off the dribble, and he does, you got to live with that because it means UConn isn't running their sets, means UConn isn't getting the ball to other guys. Or if you make him give the ball early, it means someone else is initiating the offense, and that's not what they want to do. You want to have Castle coming off screens, getting inside. You want to have Spencer coming off screens, hitting shots from deep. You want to have other guys really running the offense. So I think the best way to defend Tristan Newton is pressure him, and if that involves making him beat you off the dribble, then that's what it involves.
Well, let's move down to the West. And again, Nate Oatsburner should be joining us hopefully here soon, waiting on him to hop in, but we'll go back to him. But the other part of this equation, we talked with Seth a little bit about it, what Alabama has to do in order to beat Connecticut. Well, how did Alabama get there? Alabama takes down North Carolina 89-87, and they just outran North Carolina. Like, it's not often. We know in North Carolina's DNA is fast, go, 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 go. And there's not many teams that can play at that tempo with that type of pressure and really run it down their throat like an Alabama can. And we've seen that. There was times North Carolina would make a shot and they would be celebrating or jogging back, and Alabama's at the other end of the floor dunking it. That's how fast a Nate Oates team plays. They win, then they turn around and beat a team in Clemson who was kind of like a team of destiny as well. And again, the elite offense, they scored 89 points in both games this week and make their first ever Final Four. How about this for a stat? I kind of alluded to it at the opening here. This is the second year in a row a team has a top 10 offense and a sub-90 defense made the Final Four. Last year, Miami was 6th in offense, 99th in defense. Alabama 3rd in offense this year, 104 in defense. And it goes back to the point again at the beginning. We're in the era where elite offenses can carry you. You just have to play good enough defense for small stretches, enough to help carry your offense. Alabama's offense is elite. And we talked, they had lost what was like 4 of their last 6 in the regular season, and they did not look good, and now they're in the Final Four. Fellas, how do you think this happens, and what have you seen from Alabama during this run to get to the first ever Final Four that makes you think they have a chance against Connecticut?
I would only like to go first because I've been the biggest Alabama hater on this podcast for the past 3 months. I just want to be abundantly clear. I know every time I've admitted my wrongdoing, Michael's like, "You don't have to do that," but like,
I'm wrong all the time, dude. I didn't get a single Final Four team right, and I'm still here.
I got UConn. Wait, you doubted UConn, really?
I had Auburn beating them.
Well, yeah.
Remember when
You
Peyton
talked
was
Peyton
bullying
into
me
it,
about
too.
that?
Yeah,
You
sure.
talked Peyton into it.
Bad take.
That's true.
Bad take.
So okay, here's my thing. They showed their resiliency, right? And obviously, this is a perfect time to do a public apology. Go ahead and bring up Nate or whatever he goes by, because him and I have had really fun interactions in the last couple of months. This is me admitting my wrongdoing about Alabama. Like, it is.
Go ahead and intro him.
I mean, look, I've never met him, but I know he's been on the pod before. Good to have on friend of the program, right? We can call him that officially, right?
Yeah. No,
Nate Oatsburner. Look, this is really quick before we dive into what you thought and all the emotions, because I'm going to get to do that later with State, right? Like, we're both in this position, so we can like put aside the differences on Twitter for a day. But my point is look, what they showed against, and I had questions about this. I talked with whoever we had on the pod after the Sweet 16 or whatever the last pod was where we had somebody on, and I said, what do you see from the variance difference? Oh, it was Max Barr. I said the variance of, okay, the team had to really play it at Grand Canyon's, kind of almost bully ball style for a minute there. And look, we know that their offense, like Josh said, can get back on any play and keep themselves completely in it. So look, I'm just admitting the fact that I didn't think that their defense was going to be able to be consistent enough. And it really was. There was moments in that game where North Carolina couldn't get consistent back cuts that they really like. Right? North Carolina gets a lot of really good offense when guys are moving behind the ball, right behind the back of the defense, and Alabama was staying enough length behind them. I know Steph talked about the length of the bigs and even the length of the guards, but that's not the way they play, and it really worked out for them, and I think that's really what helped get them here.
Well, Nate, it is good to have you on, as Trevor said, and I just got one question for you. Who the hell needs defense? Am I right? I mean, elite offense is going to beat elite defense every time. And Alabama, we talked about this after I hopped in. You were on Twitter Spaces the night after Kentucky, or the same night Kentucky beat the hell out of Alabama in Rupp Arena. And we talked about Alabama's defensive woes. And it's not like Kentucky was much better, but we did also say teams like Kentucky and Alabama and Illinois and all these teams, when your offense is that elite, you're always going to have a shot. And Alabama played good enough defense through this tournament to get them a bye, to allow Mark Sears and that offense to really get cooking. And now you're in your first ever Final Four. Congratulations, my friend. And once again, who the hell needs defense?
Thank you, man. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, but yeah, it's been a crazy turnaround. Like, obviously, how we kind of we struggled at the back half of the season. We had some untimely injuries. I really think that game against Tennessee in Coleman took a lot out of the team. It kind of hurt the confidence, because just getting that opportunity, that was essentially for the regular season title in the SEC. You end up losing that one, and then it compounds with going to Florida the next game. SEC tournament, you play Florida again, which isn't a great matchup. You go home early, so I think the rest and getting healthy helped a lot in the first weekend. Obviously, our best three-point shooter goes down against Grand Canyon and doesn't play against North Carolina or Clemson. So not having him, we had to have other guys step up. And, man, did they. Grant Nelson, North Carolina game, I put up some historic stats with the combination of, points, rebounds, and blocks. He showed up so big in that game.
We just talked to Seth Davis. He was on before you, and he brought up that we talked to him about that Grant Nelson performance, and he talked about covering him at North Dakota State, and he kind of seen this in him, even though he struggled all year. And he thinks, looking ahead to UConn, that he's going to have to play like that again to have a chance to beat UConn, but he thinks there's a potential for Grant to have another breakout game like he did against North Carolina.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, you look at North Carolina and UConn and kind of their similarities with just how the roster is constructed. They have, electric guys that can score. They also have an inside threat, Baycott being North Carolina's, and Klingon obviously being a different kind of animal, 7'2". I mean, he was unstoppable against Illinois, but yeah, and then against Clemson, we had Jaron Stevenson step up, and he reclassed, so he's kind of struggled this year to find, I guess, his footing and his role. He was shooting really well in the non-conference, and then had a little bit of trouble down the stretch of the season, and then he broke out. And I mean, how many threes did he end up hitting against Clemson that were just so timely? And at one point, I think Gerard hit two back-to-back possessions, and Jaron came back down and shot two more and just matched it. So it's unbelievable that different guys have stepped up when obviously coming into the tournament, we thought we got to have Mark Sears play well, which he has done all year. But it's the guys that don't normally have those huge performances that stepped up really big in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, which is where Alabama basketball is always fallen. So, man, it's a surreal feeling to finally break through. I've been waiting on this for about 22 years is how long I've been attending Alabama basketball games. So
Trevor.
That was my question. So
Yeah,
look, I know we've been aligned on Twitter for a while and we've had our differences, but let's just lay the sword down and let's just celebrate for a second, dude. Like 1983, my mom was 13 years old. We'll get to that later. Your team has never done it in program history. Just like you're being all nice and this is what the games and what this led to. Let it out, man. Like just tell us, how does it feel?
Did you cry?
It feels amazing.
Did you cry?
Seriously,
I did. I cried.
I did too. Thank you.
You should have.
Friends and family. I got a daughter who is a toddler. Cried in front of her. Like, man, it's such a cool feeling. Like, especially just, I mean, not ever having it. Like, we've gotten close. Like in 2004, we had an Elite Eight team, but to finally break that seal, especially in this era with Nate Oates, that he's just been building and building it, and we're so close. Well, number 1 overall seed last year, expected to kind of go to the Final Four, got upset in the Sweet 16, which Ali, we've been to the Sweet 16 like 12 times. So, only been to the Elite Eight once before this year. So, man, I probably could not put it into words exactly how I felt when it happened. Just like joy and like celebrating with friends and family. It was crazy. Actually, we talked about road tripping over to Phoenix with some of my buddies that were there that night. A couple of them backed out, so we ended up booking flights to go out there.
Awesome.
Last night. So I'm gonna head out there on Thursday night and stay until at least Sunday. Maybe we'll extend it if we somehow can take down the monster.
Last thing I'll say, buddy, is congrats. First of all, like I said, I led with the question on that. Obviously, the thought that we're connected, aligned forever. Mark Godfrey walked so that Nate Oates and Kevin Keats could run. So congrats again, my friend.
Well, so did I was going to say DeRosa. 2 things I'm taking from this. 1, a lot more credit needs to be given to the original OG Wimp Sanderson, who actually had some pretty good Alabama teams in like the 80s, early 90s, won some SEC titles, like 3 in a row, if I remember, tournament titles. So that's got to be a big deal for him and his family. And then secondly, this shows that Nate Oates, even though they've had some come up short moments in the last couple of years, is winning SEC, getting overall number 1 seeds, kind of falling short. He has been ahead of the curve the last 4 or 5 years with his analytics, with his modern basketball approach, shooting a bunch of threes, getting guys who can shoot, play, make, pass, score, all that fun stuff. He's finally getting his reward. And I think Nate Oates now cements himself, no matter what happens this upcoming weekend, as one of the top coaches in the game because he got ahead of the curve and he's using math to his advantage.
Did we not believe Nate Oates was one of the top coaches in the game before?
He was, but you know the knock. And we're going to talk about it with Matt Painter because I'm going to go on a little rant. But you know how people are. You can see it, but if you don't have something to back it up with awards and credentials and all that, people always have the asterisk. You can't take that away from him now. It solidifies him.
I mean, when you watch those Buffalo teams, you said some name earlier that sounded like jibber jabber. I'd never heard that name in my life.
Wimp Sanderson, he was the original OG for Alabama basketball.
Wimp
Sure.
I'll just say this about Wimp. He kind of built
Mhm.
the history part, and he essentially took Alabama to a just a different level of competitiveness. He never broke through the Sweet
Travels pretty
16,
well.
but he kind of built the foundation for Alabama basketball in general. Like he consistently made the tournament. He he made it to the Sweet 16 I think 6 times. So
Mhm.
he kind of built the foundation for us, and I think we're top 3 in the SEC in um all-time wins,
Yep.
winning
SEC
percentage.
tournament titles.
We're second in tournament titles, only behind Kentucky. Um, Second in regular season titles behind Kentucky. So
Mhm.
Alabama basketball, people don't understand. Like obviously, without the Final Four, I don't think people realized what kind of program that Alabama basketball was. But Nate getting us to the Final Four, I think, will actually get people thinking about what kind of program Alabama is.
DeRosa, it's been hidden behind the legendary Alabama football program, but
Yeah.
he's right. It's got a nice, it's not a great, but it's a nice little basketball history. And now it's only getting better as long as Nate Oates stays there. They've got, I mean, look at them now. Go ahead and make the point that you were making about Nate Oates in this program, though. This is monumental, man.
Yeah, just going back to when you were watching those Buffalo teams, like they were just so well coached, and I mean those guys are super talented. They didn't win a TBT title, not that that means anything, but like they got an extra milli, so good for them. But like yeah, you watch that Buffalo team when they beat Sean Miller's Arizona team. Just I mean we saw how well coached they were and how they completely like that was against DeAndre Ayton, that was against Alonzo Tree who ended up playing pro ball. They beat them, and then the next year they repeated it. They smoked an Arizona State team. Then I believe they lost in the round of 32 again. But just looking at Nate Oates from there, it's like, yeah, we knew this guy was a great coach. And then he goes to Alabama, like recruiting completely different from Buffalo, New York to Alabama. He was able to succeed there. But I wasn't going to ask anything about Nate Oates. I just think we all really know Nate Oates is an excellent coach. I think
Mhm.
he's definitely proven that. Like you guys mentioned how good Alabama was. That Alabama did have a history and that it's a solid program, but nobody expected Nate Oates to make them a 1 seed, bring them to a Final Four, win an SEC title a couple times. So yeah, but I'm not gonna lie. My question was just gonna be completely on the tournament, just more like from the fan side. I was gonna ask Trevor this later, so Trevor can prepare his answer now. But just for as an Alabama fan, was there one moment, one play that has stuck out to you? Just one moment that you look back and say, like, man, like that is the moment or that is the play of the tournament for us thus far.
This is an incredible question.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually tweeted it out. It was the Mark Sears logo 3 in the Elite Eight game for me. Like, just that's when I knew that it was destiny for us to finally get there this year. Like, the sequence before that was I talked about it earlier. Joe Girard hit 2 threes in a row. Jaron Stevenson hit 2 back to back to match that, and then Clemson missed. We stopped Clemson, and went back down the court, threw it to Mark Sears in logo 3. He stuck his tongue out. I think No Context College Basketball posted that picture, and then Clemson called timeout. I think we had gone up 9 at that point with 5.5, 6 minutes to go. So that was when that's the play that's really like wow. I mean, obviously, and I could pick one out in every single game.
Mhm.
But that's the one that I'm just like, yeah,
I-
this was it.
in our last minute we've got here with you, Nate, and again, congratulations, my friend. You're playing the Monsters. They're going for back to back. We talked about it earlier before Seth came on. They're 4th all time heading into the Final Four. UConn, that being pronouns, pal. They've got a scoring margin of plus 111. They're blowing everybody out. They look poised to repeat for the first time since Florida. With your analytical eye, fan eye, however you want to break this down, in like 90 seconds, if Alabama pulls the upset and stops UConn from going back to back and they take them down on Saturday night in Phoenix, in your opinion, how does it happen?
I tweeted about it right after the Final Four because I kind of have that Kobe mentality, and also just like I've been making fun
Job's
of
not done.
Auburn fans about like just they're always like bragging about that Final Four where they got there and lost to Virginia. And somebody in our fan base says this a lot. I don't want to just get there. I want to win the whole damn thing. Like, so talking about beating UConn, I think you got to push the tempo to an extreme level. You got to take Klingon out of the game in some way, shape, or form, because I don't think we have a matchup for him. We haven't really had a matchup for any big man. We've played well against them a few times this year, but you have got to figure out a way to neutralize him, and that's the key to the game. Because if he plays to how he's been playing, they might beat us by 30. But you got to find a way to get him out of the game, whether that's pushing the tempo as quick as you can, trying to get Grant Nelson to, hit some shots, Jaron Stevenson stretch the floor. You got to find a way to neutralize him.
Well, no matter what happens on Saturday in Phoenix, they can never take this away from you. Your team is a Final Four participant for the first time in your lifetime and first time in program history. We are proud to have you as a friend of the program. You've been a voter for the last 2 years. You've been on multiple shows. I'm happy for you. I think we're all happy for you. I hope that you guys give them a really close game to make it interesting and maybe even pull the upset off. But no matter what happens, they can't take this away from you. And if we're being honest with Nate Oates, I think this is only the beginning. I think you, Alabama, as long as he's there, they're always going to be in the conversation. We're happy for you, my friend. We can't wait to have you back on. Hell, we might have you back on next week when we talk about national champions. Maybe add to Alabama. But congratulations. We're happy for you, and we can't wait to talk to you again, my friend.
Really appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you very much. That is Nate Oates Burner. You can find him over Twitter for all things Alabama basketball and talking all sorts of shit about Auburn and any other SEC team that wants to step up to the tide, because they are the class of honestly, if you look at the last 3 years, Alabama has been the best program in the SEC. If we're talking about everything encapsulated, they've been the best program, and that's a lot due because Nate Oates is that good. Before we go in and talk about the other two and let Trev get a little emotional, see if we can break him down here, I want to talk to you about a word from our friends over at Rhythm. You guys already know that March is filled with unpredictability and thriving upsets. But what if AI could help you navigate chaos and win some bets? Enter Rhythm, the AI sports betting app for player props and game picks. Rhythm stands at the forefront of innovation, offering sports enthusiasts a cutting-edge tool to elevate their college basketball betting experience. The app leverages data sets, historical trends, player statistics, and more to help craft the perfect picks for you. If you head to the link in our bio on house-enterprise.com, you can sign up for free to find a set of picks perfectly tailored for you to conquer March. Filter Rhythm's suggestions by teams, props, and more to help create the perfect picks that fit your fandom. Download Rhythm, that's RITHMM, create your account, find your perfect picks, and win big. House Enterprise and Rhythm are not responsible for any losses or lost wages on picks you make. Gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Again, thank you to Rhythm. They've been awesome this March. Seriously, we've been pushing out. I know everybody in the House Network's been daily pushing out kind of the AI picks and betting lines and all that from Rhythm. They've done a great job retweeting and sharing all of our stuff. They've been really good partners to this whole network this March. So we're really proud to call them sponsors, partners, however you want to term it. But go download the Rhythm app now and start using AI technology to help get better bets for you. They've been great for us. Let's move over. It's time to talk about it, Trev. We talked with Nate Oates, and you could hear, and you had to coax him out because I think he was trying to be a little bit more reserved and not political, but, a little bit more on the safe side until you got it out of him. I just want you to come for it right from the beginning, my friend, because I'm so happy for you. I think we're all happy because North Carolina State, unless you're a Duke or North Carolina fan, there's no hatred from like other national fan bases. We're all cheering for North Carolina State, if you're wanting to be honest. You have the darling of the tournament with DJ Burns, who's going nuts. You have a great story, and Mohamed Diarra, who's observing Ramadan, who he couldn't eat or drink at all yesterday during the game against Duke. You've beaten Duke twice now in the last 2 weeks, which most of America loves. Sorry, Michael Davis. And you're heading to a Final Four, the first one since 1983. And I've got some stats here. The last time North Carolina State made a Final Four, the top 4 songs in America in March of 1983 during this tournament of the Final Four. Billie Jean from Michael Jackson came in at number 1 in the Billboard Top 100. Shame on the Moon by Bob Seger was number 2. Do you really want to hurt me?
Don't get us copyrighted. Don't get us copyrighted.
By the Culture Club was 3. And then number 4 was Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran. It has been that long since North Carolina State has been to a Final Four. But damn it, Trev, the Wolfpack are back. 9 wins, I was going to say 9 days, but 9 wins in a row. You went in the tournament 3 weeks ago. Now you're in the Final Four. Crazy, my friend. Crazy.
I'm just going to apologize now for if this goes longer than it should. But I know you have a Matt Painter rant later. So if we can have time for a Matt Painter rant, I think we have time for this. First of all, did you are we not just going to realize what song you said at the end there? Hungry Like a Wolf? I mean, the stories write themselves, guys. I just want to, just a couple of things. I did tell myself I wouldn't cry today, and I'm not going to. I already have enough. So a couple things to go on top of your song thing. My mom was 13 years old. I got to experience this game with my mom. John Rothstein actually got emotional talking about Jim Valvano on TV, a guy that he knew with Dick Vitale really well. Dick Vitale obviously knew him very well, talks about their history. 9 games, you mentioned, and God knows how many days. It wasn't a lot. I'm going to give
19,
a couple.
9 games in 19 days. I'm
going to give you guys just an idea of how this might be the most improbable run ever. And I know that we have data now that we might not have had in the past for a VCU or even a UConn or a UCLA or somebody like that. I'm going to give Evan Mia all the credit for this. NC State won 9 straight elimination games to get to the Final Four. If you use Evan Mia's pregame win probabilities, the chances of this happening were 0.0097% or 10,314 to 1. So the fact that we're here, I got to experience this with my mom, and then the moment the game went over, yes, shout out to DJ Horn, local Raleigh guy. We don't get here without him. He came back and decided to come back after transferring all over the country. The point I'm making is I got to experience this with my mom where, and look, this is no situation with Alabama where this team hasn't done this before. There's so many points I'm swirling around in my head that I don't really even are going to relay properly what this really means. But my generation, I'm 26 years old. My generation has nothing. Here's a perfect example, right? DeRosa, I know you said you're a little bit younger than me, but Butler, 2010-11, you're a student obviously now, but back then you at least have something you can grasp that you can remember in your lifetime, right? Maybe a little bit. Georgetown, right? Georgetown, most of our lifetime, is probably the closest person to us that has had the similar amount of misery, right? Georgetown blank, NC State expletive blank, right, exists, right? That's completely dead. Let's just go ahead and put that out there right now. All of that stuff is gone. Josh, Kentucky 2000, whatever it was, national champion. After that, everything doesn't matter. You've won a national championship. Louisville 2013, funny enough. Right. I'm just saying recently, just in recent memory of your adult life, right?
Yeah.
I'm 26 years old. My generation has never had anything that we can clamor onto. Every piece of merchandise, every piece of memorabilia, every piece of anything I can remember, the most memorable moment was the lowest scoring game in Dean Dome history. I got ticket upgrades, I got seat upgrades halfway through the game. Don't know how they gave a State fan that at the Dean Dome, but I don't have a memorable thing that I can grasp onto and say that's the thing that I can continue to live on for if I never see it again. A Final Four and ACC championship that happened before I was even a thought. I don't want to go too graphic. Before I was even a thought.
Twinkle in your daddy's eye, as I've always heard.
There we go. And then just from a basketball thing, I'll at least give you this. Kevin Keatts came to NC State as an offensive coach. Obviously, we know Hargrave Military Academy. He's a Rick Pitino assistant. UNCW had some incredible stretches there. Offensive coach, high volume spread, pick and roll system. Got completely dragged through the mud because he wasn't adaptable and wasn't able to do that. And then he took this team with a bunch of transfers, made him a great defensive team, an inside-out team. And that's the exact opposite of what he was hired for. And Alec Lower said it perfectly. I basically just quoted his tweet. I'm giving Alec Lower a huge amount of credit here. Again, I don't know how I got all that out, and I don't know how I even particulated most of that. I had a little bit of something written down to the side. But I was in Hillsborough Street last night at the Bill Tower with friends that I've known my entire life and who's experienced it, students, alumni. I know people that are going to be flying out there. I will not be, unfortunately. The men, the women are both going to be in separate locations, Cleveland, whatever. We're going to figure it out. I don't know, but it's going to be the greatest weekend coming up ever in my life when it comes to Raleigh, the second greatest weekend. I'm obviously married to my wife. But the point I'm making is, just to experience that with the people around you is something unbelievable. And I'll put out this personal challenge. I will drink this live on the last podcast of the show.
Oof.
This has not been opened since this has not been opened ever. It was sealed. You can see the date right there. 1983 was when this was sealed.
R.I.P. Trev.
This was bottled. This was bottled after the team won the championship in April of 1983. I will drink this live on the show if we win the national championship.
I will say,
that's it. That's all I have.
Sorry to interrupt for like a very quick second. My old man has a 1984 Georgetown one sitting at home, so I respect
really
that.
cool.
Same Cocan. Yeah.
And you know what's crazy about all this, Trev, is, I mean, I still find it really cool. Obviously, you've mentioned I've got to see Kentucky do a lot of cool stuff. And each time I feel like it's cool. But, like, this is going to sound bad, but it's the truth. Like, Kentucky's expected to do that. Like, Louisville, until recent years, and then still older fans are expected to do this. North Carolina State fans like you, and you've had some good teams and some high hopes. Like, you've had some good recruiting classes, good recruits coming in, and you always find a way to drop the ball one way or another. And then the year that like it seemingly shouldn't happen, you go on this magical run, and this is the beauty of March. And we were tickled to death for you, the pictures and all that when you were out. Where were you in Raleigh? Like the campus or wherever? Right
in the middle. It's for those that know or don't, like the roundabout, the bell tower, and then literally not even 5 blocks away is the downtown Raleigh area. Like campus is on the other side. It's like the most perfectly well put out campus. What? Okay, awesome. I'll see you Saturday. See you Saturday, Julius. Find me. I'll be right. I always go. Like I've only been once. My wife and I will be right under the north tower part of it. So,
and see, that's the cool thing because I can relate to that. So with Kentucky, they had been on the Final Four drought since they won the title in '98. Well, when we finally get back in 2011 with Brandon Knight, Peyton and I's sister was going to school down there, so we took her back with her husband at the time. And we stayed for the team to come back, and everybody celebrated at like 1 a.m. It was really cool. So I can relate to that, how cool that is. And I want to bring up this too, fellas. Peyton, by the way, welcome to the show. I know you were dealing with some headache issues. Rick Pitino. You talked about the Rick Pitino coaching tree a little bit with Kevin Keatts. This is now 4 assistants who's made a Final Four that coach under Rick Pitino. Tubby Smith, Billy Donovan, Kevin Keatts, Mick Cronin. What a legendary! I mean, he's amazing. Not to even count like Rick Pitino's accomplishments. The coaching tree produces winners now. I know Trev. We let him have the floor like he should have. Peyton, your first words in North Carolina State's magical run, because we do want to talk about Duke and kind of some of John Shire's coaching decisions there, but just this Carolina State run to the Final Four, man.
Yeah, I'll let Duosa talk about that. I know he has something planned for that. I've seen on Twitter he's posting about it. So I'll let him take that. As far as this NC State tournament run, when we talked about on the House Enterprise show right after Selection Sunday, and we talked about our preview show for the bracket, and we were talking about top storylines, I would have not imagined that the top storyline in college basketball heading into this tournament was going to be NC State and DJ Burns and Kevin Keatts. Like, Kevin Keatts, if they did not make the tournament, his job was in jeopardy. Like, he was going to get fired. He won the ACC tournament. He got a 2-year extension off that.
Did you hear when Seth? Did you hear when we were talking about Seth about how one thing changes fate? If Michael O'Connell does not bank that 3 in against Virginia, they're out of the ACC tournament. Kevin Keatts is out of a job.
If McNeely, who's their best free throw shooter, who's like a 90% free throw shooter, if he makes that free throw, not even who cares about the buzzer beater? And I guess Michael DeRosa did have a question for me about that, and I'm still processing that question. But like, there's so many things that, like, and that just proves that Evan Mia, like, obviously stats don't always prove everything, but like 0.0097% chance. I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to check my phone, I'm going to look at my camera roll, and none of those photos are going to exist. Yeah. April 1st, like, regardless of the holiday. I woke up this morning genuinely believing it wasn't true.
That's crazy, man. Peyton, did I cut you off? Did you ever want to finish your thought there?
No, just go ahead. This whole run was just incredible. I was on Michael Davis's show Friday talking about it and mentioned how DJ. Yeah, shout out to Michael and Desmond, all those guys over there out of pocket. Got great things going over there, Tobacco Sports Radio. I was on those show Friday, and I talked about DJ Burns and how he's the most beloved college basketball player in the country right now. And the fact that he was the catalyst for upsetting Duke and ending their ACC tournament run and ending their March tournament run is just ridiculous. They couldn't happen to a better team, and this whole NC State run is just incredible. And by the way, this whole run started when they beat Louisville in the first round of the ACC tournament. And that game was pretty damn close, by the way.
It was.
Kenny Payne didn't do a lot of great
Yeah.
things at Louisville in his 2 years there. One thing he did do great, he was the catalyst of the NC State launch. So congratulations.
No, it's an incredible point too, because like someone even last night, like it's something that like we as a fan base are completely and vehemently aware of. Like I just want everyone, you three included, to understand that like the whole world was talking about he didn't have a job Wednesday morning. They lose the game against Louisville, right?
Yep.
And even there are people that push back against that. Like, Boo Corrigan, has connected to a lot of people here in Raleigh, so I'll tread carefully. But like the point I'm making is that his job was not going to be very easy. I'm talking about Boo Corrigan's here, right? Like they do anything in the ACC tournament, he was really going to have to think about giving him that final year because of the buyout and all this other stuff, right? But it's something like even last night celebrating a moment. So I hear someone next to me go like, just imagine Louisville, like just imagine that Louisville game goes differently. They were tied in like 5 minutes left or whatever. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Like he was unemployed more than likely on Wednesday morning, 18 days ago.
That's crazy, man. It's just the hand of fate, DeRosa. Do you have anything on this NC State run? Because I do want to talk about Duke's end of this and a couple other things before we move to Purdue.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to get to all that. First, I want to read the text message I sent Trevor as soon as NC State won. Yeah, I said, well, that was a depressing end. Was a good season, though. Congrats on that. At least you'll have that. Just wish they would have made the Final Four. Rats. Hey, there's always next year. Go Wolfpack.
And I'm like, by the way, as he's sending that, everyone else is sending congratulations, and I'm on the way to Hillsborough Street, and I'm confused. My all caps are still on. I'm texting him back like, I have no idea what you're saying, but thank you. And like, it literally just was a fever dream.
He just texted me a bunch of letters when I told him congratulations. I said, holy fuck yeah, let's go. And he texted me a bunch of letters like A, K, S, O, A. Like it's all in caps.
I was so sick of saying
I don't know what you said, but I agree with you.
I don't remember what I said either, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Really quick, I know you have that question from earlier. I'll just say this. I would feel like this run, point whatever statistic aside, I feel like I would be doing it a disservice by picking one. The one thing that I will say, because to be honest with you, that final 4 minutes when we took a 12-point lead, I kind of blacked out. I kind of don't remember basically anything from the 4-minute mark, under 4 timeout, till I got to Raleigh. I really don't remember a lot of that, to be honest with you. Just the last whatever, just a lot going on. What I will say, I know were you mentioning like specifically the run in the NCAA tournament or the ACC tournament? Doesn't matter, right? Obviously, what those 5 days got us here, right? That there's no way they're in the tournament without those 5 days. So what I will say, I've been very polite about this publicly, but I mentioned like we need something to hold on to, right? Like I need something, right? And what I'm never going to forget about this run, I actually queued this up, didn't know that your question was going to even be asked. DJ Burns is Kyle Filipowski and Armando Bacot's daddy. You see this? He's their daddy.
Well, hey, I text our group during the early part of that game when DJ had like the first 7 points or whatever, and he's just backing down Filipowski and putting a shoulder into him, and Filipowski was like, "Oh, my ribs," and I text you guys, and you agreed. Filipowski was no part of the back down. Like when DJ caught the ball and they hadn't ran a double team at him, and he started backing down. You could just see Filipowski like, "Oh, this ain't gonna be good. This ain't gonna be good." He was no part of it.
To answer the question of DeRosa, it makes this run so much more sweet and something that I'll never forget, because guess what? As many championships, as many of the moments that I can think of that are on the other end of this, DJ Burns is one of the best players, anybody to ever come through this university, and he should be remembered for that. And it's because of these two guys who were thought of as the best players of this year and and all the preseason expectations, which was totally right at the time. Look, I predicted State to be third in the ACC when the regular season was going to finish, right? Shout out to Stephen Bagel for putting that video out, right? And that aged incredibly poorly. But here we are. There was a lot of great points in that whole point, but my point is these two guys, it had to go through Duke. It had to go through Carolina. It had to go through Virginia, right? All of the history. It had to go through the teams that ultimately might have won the war, but the battle, essentially, if we're talking about this year, was won, and that's ultimately what team is left standing. It's the team that was a 10 seed in the ACC tournament that made the freaking Final Four as an 11 seed. I'm finished. I apologize.
DeRosa, you know what's incredible? We're having fun with North Carolina State's offense. DJ Burns putting up 25 and 10, and you got Casey Morsell making shots, and Michael O'Connell hitting the occasional 3. But look at their defense during this 9-game win streak between the ACC tournament 5 and the 4 to get to the Final Four. They're holding teams to a combined 69.1 points per game. The highest points they've given up was the first game against Louisville, where they gave up 85. They've held everybody to basically 75 and under during this run. So their defense deserves a lot of credit. And you look, we talk about it, DeRosa, momentum in sports is a real thing. They started to win some games. They win the ACC championship game. They felt like, shit, we can do this. You've seen the confidence. It rolled over to the NCAA tournament. You've seen it yesterday against Duke. Even when they missed shots and both teams shot horrendous to start the game, it didn't phase them because defensively, they're running double teams down. They're switching handoffs. They're hedging hard. They're doing all this stuff. They're bouncing because momentum's on their side and they feel like they can beat anybody. They're holding teams in the postseason to 69 points per game, which they were not doing in the regular season because they believe they can do this. This is what March is so special for, DeRosa.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, aside from like individual sports, like a tennis, a fighting sport, like boxing, MMA, whatever, I don't think there's a sport that is more confidence-based than basketball. When shots are going, you're on top of the world. When they're not, you're really down on yourself. But to answer, first of all, shout out Julius. He's been here the whole time. He's a Hoya fan. We interact quite a bit on Twitter. Hopefully we get some Eddie Lampkin news soon. I hear that's coming fairly soon. I don't know if he's coming to Georgetown or not. I hear he's announcing soon. And hopefully we get Malik Mack news sooner than later because that kid is good. But to answer, I don't think Duke played a good game. I don't think it was a well-coached game. Early on, first of all, they played a low possession game and they left DJ Burns one-on-one on the block against Filipowski. And you guys saw it. Yeah, Filipowski was just didn't want it. And you wanted to get DJ Burns in space because he's not the most athletic guy. So early on, they had him in ball screens. He was guarding Flip and they had him and then they'd run Roach. It was a lot of Roach who had more cell on him. And we had a good McCain game, but a lot of Roach. They ran Roach off some of these screens and it worked well enough. Roach missed a couple good layups, but Roach is still a good player. You get that shot and you're like, yeah, that's a good shot. We take that. But then as soon as NC State switched to had Diarra on Filipowski, and then they had Burns guarding Mitchell, and they didn't run anything for Mitchell. They didn't try to get Mitchell the ball in space. They didn't really do anything there. And they tried to play a low possession game, single covering DJ Burns with Filipowski, who's just not as strong. He's just not. It was
Flip
a weird
found out with 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, and that was it.
It was over.
Oh my goodness. Diarra got his fourth foul. I think 10, 12 minutes left in the game. I remember this vividly because I texted
13 minutes left in the game.
13 minutes. Thank you. I texted, Tommy sent me a text and he's like, yeah, man, NC State might win this game. And I said, I am nervous with that Diarra foul. They played Middlebrooks and Burns for a good bit at the same time for probably about 2-3 minutes. Duke didn't try to speed up the pace once.
Shout out Middlebrooks too. He's played incredible.
He's excellent. Not trying to take anything away from NC State or any of those guys, to be clear. NC State has been excellent. Trev went on the run. I mean, you guys mentioned their defense. They're hitting shots. These guys have been absolutely excellent. Don't want to take anything away from them. But I think Shire coached a bad game. I think, they just tried to play low possession. They weren't moving the ball offensively. It was a lot of Roach, but then Roach didn't want to shoot the ball, so we'd kick it with 10 seconds left. They had no plan. Yeah, and then defensively, I just think they coached a bad game. And
two last points I want to make too. Shire, obviously, you're the head coach of Duke. But next time you go a 2-2-1 press, try not to leave DJ Burns wide open behind the rim off of one reversal pass because North Carolina State, they made me nervous on the initial catch in. They caught it too deep and put themselves in the coffin corner and got trapped. But once they got the ball reversed or they could hit middle real quick, that opposite guy, a lot of times it was Burns on the catch. Sometimes it was Middlebrook. The guy deepest was wide open. And then DJ would make the crazy spin layups and talk all this shit, which I love, by the way. I love. And then, I just lost my second point there. I just lost the second point to the game.
I'll follow up on what you said, though. About Shire. Because while I'm not sitting here ready to, break down exactly what happened, I think DeRosa did a great job of it because he's watched it from everyone else's perspective other than mine. So I think it's good to hear that and really realize what people were seeing because I agree. I mean, there were some adjustments there that I was just sitting there. I was floored they weren't making. I was just okay, I don't know about speeding it up or anything like that because that's really what we were trying to do for a really long time. I don't really care if I'm saying we anymore, but we were speeding it up and that's how we needed to do it. We couldn't get a single shot in the first half and transition was going to be the biggest difference, right? And obviously that ended up not being the case. It ended up being put it inside, like I mentioned earlier about how Kevin Keatts was this fast coach while we brought him in to be this offensive style and take us into a new era, whatever. And then defense and inside out gets us the victory. It doesn't make any sense from a frame of how it started 3 weeks ago, where at the end of the day, like I've seen Shire enough now. I've been to some games in person. I've watched them on TV as plenty, just like everyone else has. I've been to games where like I can think of last year, a perfect example, right? State beat Duke in the first half by like 30 last year at PNC. And that was a completely different Duke team, obviously a little bit more experience, whatever. But my point is like we've seen instances in Shire where like not every coach is going to be perfect. We've all said it. Following the guy is the hardest thing in sports. It's one of, if not the hardest things in sports. And he's done an incredible job. And honestly, some of the discourse from Duke fans, and I'm not going to call any names here because there's been enough of them, but like to call it a failure to make the Elite Eight, regardless of who they played and the seeding number, the seeding was whack. Like we have already made that point. I don't want to hear as somebody who like it's the Kentucky Louisville, same thing. There's no criticism that you can give of John Shire from a non-coaching perspective of a failure in this case. The game specifically, sure. But to say that Duke had a failure of a season is crazy to me. That one thing, you're going to have pieces that you can take away, sure. But like this was an incredible team that I didn't think we were going to win the game at any point.
And shout out DJ Horn for, I mean, once he got rolling the way he's been all tournament, he hit some shots just off of a catch when Duke was pressing. Just no hesitation, 3 pull-ups, was burying them. He carried the North Carolina State offense for stretches there in the second half. I mean, great. What a story from North Carolina State. Last thing to wrap up the South region there. Duke did beat Houston in the Sweet 16. Good game. Obviously, Jamal Sheed going down hurt. But I'm tired of hearing the excuses from Houston people, from Duke haters. Well, it was the easiest. I mean, things happen. Duke still had to play a good Houston team for pretty much the rest of the game, and they kept it close. It's not their fault Jamal Sheed went down. So chill out. You got to beat who's in front of you, and it's unfortunate Sheed went out, but it wasn't their fault. What are they going to do? Just stop playing. Congratulations, North Carolina State, though. What a great story. Real quick, down to the Midwest with Purdue. Like we talked about it, the redemption tour, right? Could they do it? We felt that this bracket was favorable, all things considered, with Kansas having some limitations, Gonzaga playing better. But then it would be them in Tennessee, and that's exactly what we got in the Elite Eight. Purdue played Gonzaga. I mean, it was a close game in the first half. Second half, they kind of put their foot on the pedal, pulled away from Gonzaga. Gonzaga wasn't able to make shots. Purdue dominant inside, of course. They got good guard play. They pull away from Gonzaga. Tennessee plays an incredible game against on Friday night against Creighton. We worried about Creighton's toughness all year, kind of their bench depth. That caught up to them. Tennessee was able to go past them. These two played one of the best Elite Eight games that we've seen. And this has been multiple times since just ECB started in 2018 alone that we've seen Purdue and Tennessee match up in the tournament and play nothing but bangers. Peyton, I'll let you take this one. Purdue wins 72-66 to get back to their first Final Four since 1980. By the way, you want to know those top songs in 1980 when they made it? Number 1 was Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 by Pink Floyd. Classic. Number 2 was Longer by Dan Fogelberg. Not really familiar with it. And the number 3 song in the March of 1980 when Purdue last made their Final Four was Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. We're talking 44 years ago. But Peyton, Purdue, Tennessee, incredible college basketball game. I thought as great as Dalton Knecht was, and he had to take those shots in the second half to give them a chance, he looked gassed because the shots he was hitting the first half got the same looks clean in the second half, and they weren't going in, I think, because his legs were tired.
I posted on my Twitter watching this game. I want a yearly Tennessee-Purdue matchup in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament every single year, because every time these two teams face off in the tournament, it's absolute bangers. Like 2019, the Sweet 16 game, that was a hell of a game. This one was a hell of a game. Like it was back and forth. Like they was going back and forth to start the game. Tennessee would go on a run. They'd go up 8 points. Purdue comes back, answers with a 12 or 15-4 run, take the lead. It's just there's a game of runs. I thought you guys mentioned how John Shire didn't adjust in the NC State game. Matt Painter did a hell of a job adjusting because to start the game off, he had Braden Smith guarding Dalton Knecht, and I don't really understand why because that is barbecue chicken. He was getting so many curls to the rim.
He
was shooting
himself, I think.
He was shooting over the top. He got going easily when Braden Smith was guarding him, and then Matt Payne was like, okay, the hell with this. I'm putting our best on-ball defender, Lance Jones, on him. And although he still had 37, Lance Jones did a better job. He made it tougher for Dalton Knecht to get that 37. That's what you want. Dalton Knecht, a hell of a player. Zach Edey, I don't give a shit. I mentioned this last year with Zach Edey. enough of this whole shit like he's only good or he's only putting up these stats because of his height. You're incorrect. You don't know ball if that's what you're going to make an excuse about. He's only 7'3". That's the reason he's dominating. Like, no, there's been multiple guys in college basketball for the last multiple decades that's been his height who has not dominated the game, has not been as skillful as he has. He had 40 points in probably the most important game of this dude's career this far until they head to the Final Four next weekend. And he dropped 40 points. He blocked Dalton Knecht, who we've all been saying, specifically me, that Dalton Knecht has been the best player in the country for the last 2 months. He had an important block on Dalton Knecht with like 2 minutes to go, pretty much clinched the game for them. I just thought Purdue, even though they shot poorly from three, they shot the free throws poorly, they still won this game by 6 points. That just shows how good this Purdue team really is.
DeRosa, a couple points on that. First of all, as much as I know the rules, I just kind of found out recently with this whole Zach Edey discussion of, and we've talked about it, we don't have to rehash it. Yes, he gets fouled a lot and probably should be more fouls called on him. That's not the discussion. The discussion is he fouls a lot too. You're talking about a dude who plays physical in physical games, and he only had one personal foul. I think that's egregious. He definitely fouls more than one time. The second point, though, with the college basketball rules, every other college basketball form you go to, from elementary to middle school to high school to European to NBA, except for college basketball, 3 seconds in the lane, you have to evacuate before the 3 seconds or you're getting called. Apparently, in college basketball, the rules say once you lift 1 foot up, you reset. That's how he's able to literally stay in the paint for 8, 9, 10 seconds at a time, because his foot is in the air for a certain period and it resets. We've got to change that rule.
Is that with the ball or without? I know what you're talking about, but is that with the ball or
without the ball?
Without the ball. Okay, just making sure I
understood. That's dumb as shit, because when you're 7'4" and you can camp in the lane, you can't defend him. But I will say, DeRosa, and I know you'll agree with this, I thought Jonas Aidoo was pretty ass cheeks on him. But Toby Awaka, giving up all the height, and I thought JP Estrella did as well a job on him as they possibly could. They just got in a lot of foul trouble, and Edey around the rim is going to kill you every time. But I thought those two battled pretty damn hard. You got to give them a lot of credit for at least trying to push him out of his spot.
Yeah, I thought Aidoo was pretty poor in this game. I don't think there was really any other way to put it. He was just terrible. But I'm a Tobe Awaka guy. When we had Tennessee guy, I can't think of his name, Dallas Bolin, I believe is his name. The podcast name. Just it's like all Vol call-in show.
Yeah, that's it. All Vol call-in show.
Like, too many rhymes. Rhymes get me.
Dallas Bolin.
But when we had him on,
Dallas Bolin.
Yeah, the first question I asked was about Tobe Awaka, because I love Tobe Awaka. I think he is great. He he's like kind of my guy. You know, he's physical. He plays hard. He not the biggest guy going, but he fights. He's tenacious. He rebounds fairly well. Good athlete. Good vertical athlete. He's fast and he's strong as hell. And he proved that. Like, he moved Edey off the spots. He was the guy on Edey. When he got his 4th foul, I believe it was on like a loose ball rebound type thing where like him and Edey locked arms and they called it on Awaka. Yeah, I felt that, to me, felt like that was kind of the game. Just Awaka was so good on him. Estrella held his own. Like, full credit to Estrella, but just kind of like that. At that point, it was like, oof. But yeah, I thought they did well in Edey. And yeah, to your like earlier points, 3 in the key. I remember there were a couple times where I was like, that's a foul on Edey or a 3 in the key, but I'm not going to blame Purdue. It's the ref's problem. As you said earlier, like when a guy gets hurt, look, obviously none of us want injuries and none of us want anything like that, but you got to beat the team in front of you. It's not your fault. I'm personally the belief I want to beat any team at their biggest, baddest, best, whatever. That said, if someone gets hurt, it is not my fault. I can't control that. And I think it's kind of the same point with officiating. It's my job just to beat you. And if the refs aren't going to call something, then I'm going to abuse it. If the refs aren't going to call a coach walking on the floor, you can have a 6-on-5. Shaka Smart, keep doing it. If the refs are not going to call it, keep doing it. Make the refs call it. And if they're not going to, play however you got to play. Take advantage of what they're not going to call. And I think that's kind of what Purdue does. And you can't blame them. It ain't their fault.
Trev, you know what's so impressive about Purdue? In a game of this magnitude and a very tough opponent in Tennessee that is so physical, so dominant defensively, and has an NBA player in Dalton Knecht, they got an all-timer from their legendary center. They only had one other person in double figure scoring, Fletcher Loyer, 14. Mason Gillis, again, off the bench, and affected the game without scoring a single point. He had 0 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. Braden Smith, only had 9, but he had 7 rebounds, 7 assists. That's what makes Purdue so dangerous, is because, yes, you have Zach Edey who'll go for 40 and 16. But the rest of the guys just do so many things that don't always show up on the box score. Like, Mason Gillis played a huge role in that game and didn't score a point.
Yeah, look, I sat here for a while and tried to figure out, like, hey, like, what is the thing that ultimately, like, I thought still made me nervous about Purdue? I know you mentioned Dalton Knecht was gassed in the second half, and there's a lot of things that played into why Tennessee didn't win it. But for Purdue to have 0 points off the bench, I'm a little concerned. Like, I do think it's a little bit from the perspective of, okay, you're going to get your all-time performance from Edey. He played 39 minutes. But, like, again, our whole fear for this team was, can other guys contribute? And Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith, as poor of a shooting performance as it was, like you said, 7 rebounds for Smith, 7 assists for Smith, 3 rebounds for Loyer, 4 assists, right? They contributed in so many ways where even they combined for 3 steals. I still, at this point, like, I just have to put my hands up and say, sometimes when you have the best player on the floor, it's going to ultimately be the thing that takes you home, and that's exactly what happened. And as much as I'm a Tennessee believer, I was all year. I thought this was the team to finally do it. I thought we were going to see 2 teams potentially that could make their first Final Four in school history. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for Tennessee. But they played a really great effort. Unfortunately, they're not going to have Dalton Knecht next year. So Rick Barnes is going to have to go out there and have to figure out a fail-safe and figure out what, with the world we live in now, it's pretty normal. But, I mean, that's a big loss for a team that I thought really gave it to Purdue until the final 3 minutes.
And here's the thing, and I will direct this to my Kentucky people. I know the rivalry's fun, and you're going to give Tennessee fans a lot of shit. But when I seen a couple tweets roll in yesterday that said, ha ha, LOL, Tennessee, your best team maybe ever, and you couldn't get to the Final Four, if not now, when, you'll never do it. Listen, we're just talking about North Carolina State hadn't been to a Final Four in 41 years. Purdue hadn't been to one in 44 years. Purdue especially a little bit more North Carolina State in recent decades. But both of these teams have had incredible teams that should have made a deep run and did not. Do not tell me, as long as Rick Barnes is there and keeps bringing in talent in his system, at some point they're going to break through. So ease up on this, they'll never do it. Because like with Purdue and North Carolina State and some of these teams, the year you least expect it is the year they go on a run and make a Final Four. So chill out. I believe in Rick Barnes. I don't like Tennessee. I like covering them. But as a Kentucky fan, I don't like Tennessee. But they've got a great program that he's built, and they will make a Final Four. So ease up on the you'll never do it. Just ease up, because you're going to look like a dummy here soon. Let's talk about the Final Four. I mean, Seth Davis previewed the UConn Alabama. We talked with Nate Oates-Burner about it, the keys. To me, fellas, it's simple. Alabama, the first 4 minutes is going to be paramount to how this game goes. UConn is not, Trev, you mentioned they're shooting like 28% during this tournament. Like, they're not shooting the ball well, and they're still blowing teams out. You need to put real game pressure on them. They're going to do some stuff and try to switch, and they know Alabama's coming out shooting 35-43. So expect them to overplay. If I was Alabama, the first play or two, I would run some slips, almost like a Princeton cut, to try to get them back door. Obviously, you have to pull Clingan away from the rim and hope, like we talked about, Grant Nelson, Jaron Stevenson, some of these guys can pull him away from the rim, hit threes, or open up that offense. Alabama has to start this game off hot. They cannot find themselves down 9-0. They can't find themselves down 15-4. They have to start out, come out and throw the first haymaker and put UConn on their heels for the first time all tournament. I think the key, fellas, and I think we'll all probably agree to this, for Alabama to keep this thing close and really make it nervous in the final 2.5 minutes, they're probably going to have to go something like 15 of 40 from the three-point line. They're capable of it, and they're going to have to get UConn, just like they did against North Carolina and Clemson. Makes, misses, push the ball. Do not let UConn's half-court defense get set. And then I think those are the keys. Tempo, making threes, and then you see what happens. I'm going UConn. I just don't see how you go against them. Just no offense to Alabama. I'd love to see them keep it close. But what's your guys' predictions? How does Alabama keep this close and make it a game, or maybe even pull the upset? What are you guys feeling about the first region or the first semifinal on Saturday?
Go ahead, Islam.
I'll go first. Yeah. If you're Alabama, you got to play with pace. You got to play really fast. You got to pressure Tristan Newton as much as possible, get the ball out of his hands, space out Clingan as much as possible, ideally get him in foul trouble quickly. That said, I'm taking UConn. The question I'd ask to everyone else is, how many threes do you think Alabama needs to make to have a chance?
I think at least 15.
Yeah, at least
I think
15.
the low end. Yeah, I think 15 is the number. But that's the question I'm going to ask on just about every show I do this week. So
Here's the thing, too. Alabama is a good offensive rebounding team, but so is Connecticut. And Connecticut limits offensive rebounds. They're 81st, which isn't bad. They're top 100, so it's not bad. Defending a three-point line, Trev, UConn is 28th in the country. Teams only shoot 30.9%. If that happens to Alabama, this is another 25, 30-point blowout. Alabama, the three-point line and tempo, I think we all agree, has got to be the key for Alabama to make this interesting.
Yeah, when you asked the number, everybody, we were all like, 40. Like, I let y'all answer because I had to think about the math quickly. And to think that 15 threes is 45 points. Like, I mean, the number might sound like pedestrian to some folks because this is Alabama's offense, the number one offense in the country, or was at one point in Connecticut. It's now technically the number one offense. But, like, I'm trying to sit here and tell you, like, in the past on these shows, we've popped up the KenPom Insta game prep thing, right? Trademark, shout out to KenPom. Both these teams also, not only the 3-point thing, though, but, like, both these teams shoot an incredible percentage from two. So it's not like, okay, one team's going to have to do this or the other. Like, it's going to come down to Alabama getting stops. And as awesome as it was to talk to Nate Spurner earlier, they still aren't a great defensive team. I made that very clear in my open. I said, look, they got the stops they needed when they had needed to in some of these big pressure situations, specifically against Clemson is really where I noticed it the most. But guys, this is a team that has beaten every team by 30. Like, what is Alabama has to play like the greatest defense in the history of mankind. It's not even perfect.
Or just have Connecticut miss. That's the thing where I think Alabama.
There's no variance for it, though. They already have missed all tournament.
Well, here's the thing. That's what I was going to say. But Illinois didn't capitalize on it. San Diego State didn't have the weapons to capitalize on it. Neither did Stetson, and neither who was their second round game that they blew out. Northwestern.
Yep.
Alabama's got the one weapon if they hit. That's the thing. If they hit, let's say Connecticut comes out and they're shooting 28% again in the first half. If Alabama plays to their potential, and you got Sears and you got Aaron Estrada and Sam Walters off the bench, you got all these guys hitting shots, they could theoretically pull away a little bit from Connecticut and give themselves a little bit of safe space. They have the weapons, but they've got to make the shots. Because if Connecticut's going to miss, they're not going to miss too often. So you have to make shots and capitalize when the opportunity presents itself. It's a tall task, man. I think it's a really tall task. Like, DeRosa, do you think UConn's going to try to hold this thing to a half-court game? Because they like to get out and run through opportunity-wise. But Alabama is one of those teams, we've seen it. You don't want to run with them for a full 40. Do you think they're going to try to slow it down, just wear them down that way?
100%. UConn doesn't really play at a fast pace. I think they're one of the slower paces in the Big East. I don't think they are the slowest, but I think they're one of the slower paces. I'll double check that on KenPom as you're talking. But yeah, UConn's going to try and make this a half court game. I think it's kind of that simple. They execute so well in the half court when they're running their sets, and those are going to cook Alabama.
At the end of the day, if you just want to throw all arguments out the window about the making the shots thing we've repeated ourselves 1,000 times on, and the defense and all these stereotypical things that we're going to tell you on every show, because at the end of the day, those are the things that are going to get this done. If you just want to go with who's the best player on the floor, offensive rating wise, Cam Spencer's the best offensive rating player in the entire country, according to KenPom. Right? So if you just want to throw out by the way, I know how ridiculous that sounds as soon as I said it. Let me be abundantly clear. Obviously, there are better players on the floor, right? Mark Sears and Donovan Clingan, potentially Tristan Newton, even.
He's the most efficient, probably.
He's the most efficient, according to what I think. So if he has a game that he's capable of, that he's done all year, this game's over quickly. Is my point. Right. And why I'm like, okay, if you want to think outside the box for a second, because even this whole segment, knowing at some point I was going to talk, we all have the same points. So I'm like, well, why not give you here? If Cam Spencer has a game that we know he's capable of, he's the most efficient offensive player in the country, it's over. UConn has every advantage. And that means if Alabama gets it done, it's the greatest upset in the Final Four in a long time.
I agree. Let's move over to the other one. Obviously, Trav has personal feelings about this one. Purdue, North Carolina State. North Carolina State, we've talked about this Cinderella run and how they've got it done. Defensively, they've been really solid. They've made opportunity shots. maybe honestly shots they didn't make a whole lot during the regular season, but they have the momentum. Purdue's got the big man in the middle. I think I got asked this today. DJ Burns against Zach Edey, how's he going to guard him? I think if you're Kevin Keatts, you don't start him on there because he's so important. You can't foul him, get him in 3 fouls in the first half. I think you mix it in, defend him some, and then switch off to like Diarra or Middlebrooks or whoever, because you got to keep DJ on the floor the way he passes out of doubles and all the stuff we've talked about. And then if second half, let him if that's what you need to. But I don't think you start him on Zach Edey. I think that's a recipe for getting your most important player in foul trouble early. And then obviously North Carolina State's got to continue to make shots. They got to push the tempo and Purdue when opportunity arises, and hope DJ Horn and all these guys continue to make shots to make this interesting. Purdue's not the wagon UConn is, even though they have the spurt ability. They will like to play with their food a little bit more than UConn does, which gives North Carolina State an opening in this game. Trev, agree or disagree? Would you start, if you're Kevin Keatts, would you play DJ Burns from the go on Zach Edey?
I wouldn't play him on Zach Edey the entire game. I don't even know how this is a question. Like, they have Muhammad Diarra, they have Ben Middlebrooks, they have even a guy named Ernest Ross. So if you just need a body to throw at him, he was a great player for them last year. He's a body. He's a body that is big, lengthy, skinny. Just put him on him. Who cares if he gets 5 fouls? Let Ernest Ross play 4 minutes and let all 4 of those minutes have a foul in there. Who cares? Let him absorb it, because guess what? He's a fast player that can get out in the transition. Didn't think I'd be dropping Ernest Ross as a name tonight, did you? No, but my point is like the offense is going to be what it is, right? We know that no matter what situation this team gets into, I don't care if this is Homer or not, like they're going to find a way to get out of it, whether it's DJ Burns or whether it's the guards, right? We're all going to sit here again and say the same points in a roundabout way. The point that I think people are going to have to start learning and realizing is the question that we got brought up earlier, which I'm going to go ahead and find it because I want to give the person credit. They said they ask about not UConn sports shooting. Here it is. Shout out to Ryan Weiner. Do you guys think potential Edey versus? Oh, actually, that's the wrong question. I apologize. Whatever. I can't find it anywhere. But the point is, someone was asking, how is that matchup going to like? Is it basically going to be a give Zach Edey his 40 points and figure it out, right? Thank you. There it is, Julius. I was trying to find it. I clicked on the wrong one.
Reference this exact point.
Get 40 and stop everyone else. I've been sitting here for an hour and 41 minutes and 27 seconds, and I still don't know what the result. Like, I still don't know what they're going to do. But if everything in the last 3 weeks has taught me anything, they're going to play their own game, and they're going to try to neutralize him and let everything else figure it out. Because ultimately, who has the more experienced guards? It's the Wolfpack. Who has the more deeper rotation of bigs? It's NC State. Zach Edey is the
most athletic guards. Probably the better athletes too. Yeah,
better guards, better athletic guard. However you want to cut it, they have a talent advantage right now that I think is pretty crazy to think about, right? But the inexperience of these guards is really interesting, and I think this may come to fruition where a DJ Horn and a Casey Morsell, these are 6th-year seniors that have been in big moments for, I mean, God forbid, if you just want to say 3 weeks, for the last 3 weeks, it's been big moments. But my point is, these guys have been all over the country and done this before. My point is at the end of the day, is the point to let Zach Edey have 40 and 16? Yeah, because I think the other guys on the team can defend him well enough to just let that start to happen, and he's going to miss free throws. We know he's not a great free throw shooter. We saw down the stretch, Tennessee almost came back because of it. So honestly, to answer the question, yeah, let him have 40 and 16, because guess what? If we lose to Fletcher Lawyer and the other guard, whatever his name is, if we lose to him, then great, because that means they had their biggest performance of the year, and it is what it is.
I think I agree wholeheartedly with that. Let Edey, because he's going to get it regardless. Honest to God, he's going to get his regardless. Do not let Braden Smith have 25. Don't let Fletcher Lawyer hit 7 threes. Don't let Mason Gillis off the bench kill you with 18. Let Edey get his, because 40 and 16 alone is not going to beat you unless you score 38, but whatever, you know what I'm saying. DeRosa, Peyton, Purdue, North Carolina State, who, how, when, and why?
I'm going to go ahead and take this one because DJ Horn and DJ Burns has been incredible in this tournament for NC State. They're going to need someone else to step up if they want to beat Purdue. Whether it's Michael O'Connor, whether it's Casey Morsell, whether it's Middlebrooks come off the bench, one of those three has to step up and help them out, because you're not going to beat Purdue when you're basically, it's like a 2v5. Like, it's not going to happen. Tennessee, their best player, one of the best players in the country, Dalton Connect had 37. They lost by 6. And it's not a good recipe to beat Purdue. Like, you're going to need someone else to step up, and I do think they'll have a chance to do so. But as far as this game goes, I think Purdue's going to win. I do agree don't focus too much on guarding Zach Edey because he is going to dominate in the paint like he's done all season long, like he's done the past 2 years. But Purdue's guards in position to where they're going to have the chance to beat you or not. And it's shown last year, shown in the first round game against FDU, even the game against Tennessee. Their guards particularly did not play the greatest shooting wise. Fletcher Loyer had 14 points. Braden Smith had 7 points and a lot of assists in that game. But for shooting wise, they did not shoot the ball well at all against Tennessee in the Elite Eight game. So put them in a position where they're going to have to make shots, and if they hit it, so what? It is what it is. I like this matchup. I really hope the officiating is not officiated terrible. Like, I don't want to see early in the game DJ Burns has to set out extended periods of time because he has 2 fouls right away. Like, I don't want to see that.
If I'm Kevin Keatts in this big of a game, unless he got like 3 real quick, I ride it. Nate Oates says this. He actually said this. He said, why, just because like historically wise, why would I keep my best player out because he has 2 fouls? The math don't make sense there. Just keep playing him. Like
the argument would be though, they've done this before, right? In the Duke game, he had 8 of the first 11 points and he had 2 fouls with like 12 something remaining or whatever. And then Keatts sat him. Let's just be real for a second. He's a 6'9", 275-pound guy, right? Those breaks are more about the rest than they are about the fouls. He gets in foul trouble. It is what it is. So the 2 thing, I'm okay with sitting him for the 2 because we have Ben Middlebrooks and you have Mohamed Diarra to put in 2. It's those guys getting in foul trouble that's going to kill them, and no one's made that point. Like, those 2 guys getting in foul trouble is going to be the biggest reason that State loses this game.
DeRosa.
Yeah. I'll just go real quick. I think if you are NC State, you're going to have to pressure. I think you want to pressure. I say ball pressure a lot because it's something I just am a huge fan of. But Casey Morsell should be guarding Braden Smith probably at 94 feet. Just get up in his grill. Annoy him as much as possible. Make him work. Exactly. I'm still going to lean Purdue. Full disclosure, I believe I've picked against NC State. I picked against them against Texas Tech. That was just a bad pick. I would have taken them against Oakland, but not very confidently. I picked against them very confidently in the Marquette game. And then I wasn't very confident on the Duke side. I leaned Duke, but like also not confident. But really, I've picked against NC State 2 times, very confidently, 3 times, not super confidently.
To quote DeRosa, Peyton, he said, and I quote, Marquette's going to beat the piss out of North Carolina State.
I just put it in our private chat. Ball pressure and beating the piss, a DeRosa special.
I really thought they would, and we don't need to talk about that game. Trev's team won.
To be clear, so did I. I never predicted it, but I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, there's no way. And then to see the let me just really quick to see the compilations of the missed shots thing and to tell you that like, oh, this many of them were wide open, whatever. If you go and watch, I'll call him out. It's Sam Fetterman to put this video out about the missed shots. I love Sam to death, but my God, is it really necessary for Twitter clout to put out a missed shots video? Like, they missed all these shots. Guess what? They shot 17% because a lot of that was defense. If you look at that video, which is kind of laughable, it's eight open threes. They shot like 44 of them. Like, giving me a break with some of that stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, the variance conversation.
I'm going to reserve my right to be quiet. So let's real quick. Trev obviously didn't make a pick for obvious reasons, superstitions and all. Nope. So the 3 of us, Purdue, Connecticut, next Monday night, national championship, arguably the 2 best teams all year, right? That would be a banger. Real quick from each of us. We get Connecticut, we get Purdue. Edey Clingan. I think Purdue could put real-time pressure on Connecticut the whole way because they match up so evenly. If we get Purdue, Connecticut for a national championship, DeRosa, you first real quick. Who gets the title? Does Connecticut go back-to-back or does Purdue get their first ever?
I think if Purdue is to win this game, one thing has to happen, and it has to happen probably in the first 4 minutes, honestly. Donovan Clingan has to be in foul trouble. Other than that, I think UConn has them beat everywhere. I think UConn's guards are better. I think UConn's system is better. I think UConn just is going to outwill them. I think Newton, Castle, Spencer can beat up on Jones, Smith, Loyer. I think at the 4 spot, I think UConn has them beat. I think Caravan's better than either a TKR, and you can space out a TKR, or a Mason Gillis off the bench. I think Gillis will be able to contain him, but I really think the UConn guards will get going. I don't see how they have a matchup for just the size of those guys. Like Newton's a big, I think he's like listed 6'5". Newton's big. I think if Purdue is going to win that game, Donovan Clingan has to be in foul trouble and has to be in foul trouble very early. And you have to make UConn adjust immediately, right from tip. If that doesn't happen, I think UConn wins that game by double digits. I'm very confident in that. If
Peyton?
Klingon can win that, if Edie can win that matchup, then I think we've got a game.
I'm hoping this matchup happens. Sorry, Trav. Sorry to Nate Oates Burner, but I'm really hoping we get a UConn-Purdue matchup because I think Purdue's the only team, obviously, that's left in the tournament, pretty much the only team in the country that can beat UConn right now and stop them from going back-to-back. And I do think it actually would happen. I think Purdue actually would win this game. It all depends on the guards, and DeRosa mentioned foul trouble. Purdue's the number one team in the country at drawing fouls. When you're playing against Zach Edey, he's going to draw fouls. Klingon's going to get in foul trouble. And when you take him off the floor, they're a completely different team. I think Purdue would win this game. I do think a guy like Fletcher Loyer or a guy like Mason Gillis coming off the bench, or even Lance Jones. Lance Jones had a big shot in that Tennessee game under 2 minutes left. I pretty much put the dagger in Tennessee's heart's end of the season. So one of those guys is going to step up, hit some big shots. I do think it's close and it's very intriguing, but I do think I would slightly lean Purdue just because Zach Edey is the most dominant, the best player in the country, however you want to word it. He basically willed his team in that Tennessee game in the Elite Eight.
If we get
Go ahead.
I'll just say it because I know I'm not technical. I mean, I'm predicting if it happens. Sure. Well, if this happens, right?
Right.
Baylor beat Gonzaga in 2021, and it seemed Gonzaga was unbeatable, right? So we know that this is not something. You get to the end, and oh my God, Gonzaga, undefeated or whatever they were, right? I don't know, undefeated. I think they had like 1 or 2 losses.
No,
whatever.
They were undefeated.
Okay,
perfect. Yeah.
Right. I knew that they made it far, the whole Indiana comparison, whatever. I knew there was something there. My point is they made it there, and I think we all remember, right? We weren't interacting back then, but like, I'll never forget that game because I was like, Gonzaga's going to do this. I'm going to sit down on my couch that night at 8:59 and be like, when I get up at 11:30, Gonzaga's going to be the national champion. Mark Few is going to be on another level.
Him.
And Scott Drew showed up. Exactly. Bullied him.
Got him for free.
Bullied him. Absolutely took them to him. And guess what? And guess who can do that? Zach Edey. Peyton already laid the example out. My point is we've gotten to this point enough where we know that these teams, and this UConn team is unbelievable. We all know that. But if there is a team that can do it out of these 4 left, it's probably Purdue.
Well, I'm going to go Purdue in that matchup too, for all the reasons. Obviously, Zach Edey is the big one. But in a game like this, I trust Matt Painter. I'll get to him in just a second. But their guards will play fine. Like Braden Smith been extremely smart all year. I don't know if Fletcher Loyer has been up and down, but Mason Gillis and Trey Kaufman-Renn and even Miles Colvin hasn't played a lot, but when he's came in games, he's made shots. And I trust them. And it's, again, if UConn was to shoot badly to start against Purdue, Purdue is one of the last teams you want to do that to. And if we got this game, I mentioned probably the 2 best teams all year. It's been a while. We rarely get the 2 best teams all year playing at the end for the title. I mean, the Baylor Gonzaga was probably the last time it happened. And then before that, it's been a long while since probably the best 2 teams. Because you go through and like not even the Louisville year, because Indiana was the number 1 team and Louisville, Michigan were 2 and 3. So it doesn't happen often, and it would be a hell of a game if we got there. Let's start wrapping this up. I talked about Louisville real quick. Peyton, you've got a new head coach. We talked about it last Monday when Dusty made with the Michigan. What happens to Louisville? Well, the answer is Pat Kelsey. And I'll say this on air real quick. He's a good coach. Like, he's won at Winthrop. He's won at Charleston. And I believe he's going to win at Louisville. You watch the energy and the passion. He's already starting to bring people in. And I think he's going to reignite the Kentucky rivalry, which is a great thing. I want to see him do it at this level. I think he will win. I will say this before anybody comes from my throat. I think he will win. I think he'll do great things at Louisville. I just want to see it first. I want to see it because we've seen 100 million coaches in my 30 years be in the same spot. I will say it one more time. I think Pat Kelsey will do great things at Louisville before anybody comes from my throat. I just want to see it because we've been in this spot before. But Peyton, you got to be feeling good. I know you're feeling good. PK is already getting to work, bringing in Ryan Smith, bringing in another Charleston commit, got transfer portal kids potentially coming in for visits. I think Louisville is going to be back next year where they're back to a tournament team maybe.
If you guys haven't checked it out, my article that I just wrote that came out a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday. I don't actually quite remember when it came out, but it was definitely in the last 48 hours. It came out house-enterprise.com. I'm pretty sure that's the correct URL. If it's not, someone that can correct me. But go check out my article I wrote. It was a very lengthy article. I basically spoke what's on my mind, and if we go back to last week's episode of the podcast, my tone has completely flipped from there because if you go back to last week's podcast and we was talking about candidates, I was not too happy with the Pat Kelsey or just all the candidates that we named last weekend. I was not particularly happy with any of them. Then we flipped to like a Monday morning, Tuesday morning. I had a chance to reflect and actually think about it. And I'm not going to say I can quote unquote convince myself like a lot of Louisville fans are saying on Twitter now, but I kind of had like a come to Jesus moment and just realized like the two biggest questions that Louisville fans and the rest of the country is having with Pat Kelsey being at Louisville is one is the pressure. I still think that is a little bit of concern. How will he do with the pressure of being in a program like Louisville? That's a question that'll be answered this season or this next season. But the other answer was recruiting. Can he recruit at this level? Let me tell you something. And I mentioned in the article, and you guys can go check that out. With our NIL, Louisville has millions of dollars in NIL. Shout out to, what's his name? I can't even. Rick Kubler, who is matching, who he announced this morning that he is matching like up to $1 million in donations from the 502 circle that's heading into the Louisville basketball program. Shout out to him. We have millions of dollars in NIL. And in this landscape of college basketball, it is, correct me if I'm wrong, in my opinion, it's very straightforward and it's a lot easier to recruit now and get the top kids in a program like Louisville than it has been before NIL and the transfer portal existed. So I don't think he's going to have a problem recruiting. Also, keep in mind, he got Jeff Teague at Wake Forest. He was the number one guy to get that
Chris
guy.
Paul too.
Recruited Chris Paul. He wasn't the top then, but he was the top when they got Jeff Teague, who was spent multiple years in the NBA. So he can recruit at a high level. We brought in Wayne Smith, who shot over 40%, close to 40% from three, hit over 11, 12 threes last year. Well, you bring in James Scott, who's also from Charleston, one of the top shot blockers, one of the youngest freshmen in the country, who's going to do great things here, hopefully. And we're in the running for Dante Maddox from Toledo. We got Terrence Edwards Jr. from JMU that's coming on a visit. I'm not going to say it, even though I want to, but the program is in good hands, and I'm very excited for the Pat Kelsey era to start, and I am very pumped. This is the first time in a while I've worn my Louisville gear, and I've been proud to do it. L's up. We'll see if they're back. I hope we are, and I think we'll be in good hands.
Trev, I know you love this hire for obvious reasons. Real quickly, because we got to start wrapping up. I think I said it on air, and I'll stick by it without even seeing a full roster. I think because of Pat Kelsey's energy with the NIL, as Peyton mentioned, and it's Louisville, I think they're going to be a tournament team next year.
So I was going to make a point, and then you saying that kind of derailed it. So the only reason I'll say that is the I want to see it first or whatever. Like, it kind of goes against everything you just said at the beginning. But my point is like, look, you mentioned the obvious. Like, I've covered this guy all year. There's people out there that have covered this guy for many years, and like, to tell you that the reaction from non-Cardinals fans like myself and like other people that have been around Pat Kelsey for his entire life and coaching career are telling you this is a good hire. I don't care what I've said about it, but listen to those other people, everyone. Like, this is the Card Nation that is listening to this podcast, right? Like, I'm going to go to bat for that guy, right? One of the coolest guys I've ever had a chance to interview this year. Like, an incredible coach, an incredible, like, workhorse. Just somebody that's going to come in the building and absolutely take over the breath and life of a program that hasn't been there in recent memory, right? I missed 2013 is not that long ago, but you get my point. And the whole point I'm making is that this is somebody that I get people are going to question it, but if it gives you an idea of how much he really, the passion and all this stuff's going to be put out there, right? Like, people hear about that. But to give you an idea of how big of a fan base this was, 48 hours before, I think Peyton kind of alluded to it, right? On that Monday, 48 hours before, like, the fan base was up in arms that he was even in a candidate. And then here we are, well, let's be honest, actually 7 days later, the fan base is like rioting for this guy. Right? Like, that should just give you an idea. He's been there 7 days, and he's bought. I don't care about the NIL stuff. That's already, like, we knew that was coming, right? Because the fan base has money, and they at least were going to care about a guy that wasn't Kenny Payne. It is what it is, right? But for him to show up to that press conference and give Kenny Payne the respect that he deserves as a Louisville great, and to say that all the right stuff, I don't care. At the end of the day, this guy's going to succeed. He's succeeded everywhere else. You mentioned Skip Prosser and the stuff with Wake Forest, right? If Skip Prosser believes in you, and when you're a high school coach, I think you probably should believe in the guy too. So that's my message to Card Nation, that if some of the greatest people in basketball believe in this guy, everyone else should, and Pat Kelsey's a winner. And look, Charleston doesn't make 2 tournaments and win 30 freaking games in a season without Pat Kelsey. I'm sorry, that just doesn't happen.
DeRosa, real quick.
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if Louisville will be excellent next year. I think it'll take some time. I think Louisville fans should be a little patient because, let's be real, you're going to have at least 10 new players, probably, maybe even 13 new players. Hell,
At least 10, yeah.
yeah.
Their
give him some
ACC
time.
schedule, though,
He's good.
favors them. They only played Duke once and Carolina once, and they're both at home. Their doubles are SMU. Like, we looked it up, SMU, Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's wait till they have a roster
if they
before we
get
really
a
start to
competent.
look at.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
let's wait
agree.
till they have a
I agree.
roster.
I agree with the Rosa.
If they
Let's
have
wait.
10 new transfers, though, I know a team that has 10 new transfers that made the Final Four this. Sorry, that was uncalled for.
I know a team that had 10 new transfers that didn't win many games. A lot of those. We can do if we want to play that game, we can play that game. So, like, we can be realistic.
I'm just giving Card Nation a hard time. Okay.
Go ahead,
So
Josh.
let's wrap this up real quick. Women's game tonight. Actually, about to tip off with the first one. We've got a massive. It's a national championship rematch. I just want a prediction for this one. Number 1 seed Iowa with Caitlin Clark rematching. They're the team that beat them for the title last year. 3 seed LSU with Angel Reese and Haley Van Lith and Kim Mulkey and everything that comes with it. Incredible women's game you should tune into tonight. Who wins and goes to the Final Four? We'll go around the bend. Trevor, Iowa, LSU.
I'm going to go with the best player on the floor, and I can't stand Kim Mulkey, and I feel so bad for Wolfpack Nation, who's already in the Final Four. We haven't said that all day today as well.
Congrats.
A second team to be there as well in the same year. Sorry, I hate to turn it into this, but we haven't brought it up. And the point I'm making is, even though Iowa making it is bad for Wolfpack Nation, those ticket prices are going to be unfreaking real if Caitlin Clark wins tonight. So I apologize to Wolfpack Nation for that, but I do think the best player on the floor ultimately gets to the Final Four again. This is a legacy-type moment for her to do this in the Elite Eight to even get to the Final Four. It's an incredible moment, and I do think, again, can't stand some of the stuff with LSU, so I'm going to go with the best player on the floor, and Caitlin Clark. Sorry, it's not a big,
DeRosa, Iowa, LSU.
analysis.
Iowa, UConn wins the other game tonight. Those I don't know where those two would meet up in the bracket, but they will play each other.
They'll play each other. They're going to play each other. Peyton, Iowa, LSU.
Iowa, give me Caitlin Clark. She goes for 35.
We go with an Iowa sweep. You already mentioned yours, DeRosa. You said USC. I'm actually going UConn. Paige Becker is going to have just an all-time game.
Paige.
Trevor, Peyton, real quick. UConn, USC. Before we get out of here.
UConn. Give me UConn. The Huskies.
UConn.
So what are the odds we get reverse swept? Because we both picked the exact same teams twice.
I'll take I'll take it back. I'll take USC. I think that story with
Juju
is incredible.
Watkins.
I'll take USC. I'll change it.
She's a stud.
I
Check
watched
out the
Aiken
women's
play.
game. Shout out Kenny Brooks, the new head coach of Kentucky. Shout out North Carolina State women's for making the Final Four with the men. Incredible feat there. Shout out Matt Painter. He's taken a lot of shit for a lot of years. I've told even Purdue people to stick with him. He's a great coach. He's finally got his accolades. Same with Nate Oates, Kevin Keats, Dan Hurley trying to go back-to-back. Incredible feats. We're down to the Final Four. For men's, the women's will be set after tonight. When we come back to you, we're going to have a national champion crowned for both men and women's, and we can start wrapping the season up. It's been a long but fast 5 months, and we're at the finish line now. Thank you to Seth Davis. What an incredible honor, and how cool was that for us to have him on and spend time with us. Thank you to Nate Oates Burner. But when we come back with you, we're going to have a women's and men's national champion. We'll tell you all about it. Recap Phoenix, recap it all on the next episode of Everything College Basketball. Until then, follow us at ECB Podcast 10. Join the Facebook group if you haven't already. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff on this video, the YouTube. Tell people about us. We're doing incredible work all year. But until we come back to you and tell you about the national champions, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you down the road.
High knees, baby. High knees.